Greetings, 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 greetings. It is I, King Clifford Jefferson, a Senator of Godfrey, the fifth caravan Jew, son of folk, ruler of Jerusalem, on the reincarnation of King Edgar the Peaceful, which we here at the Third Typical English Church of England refer to as Jesus Christ. It is May 31st, 2024, which is the birth year 2974. We greet you in the principles of love, truth, peace, freedom, and as always, justice. I greet you in the name of my Queen, Sister Godwinson from the House of Godwinson, Archbishop Mel from the House of Belmont, Bishop Searchy from the House of Searchy, as well as all the other officers, members, those who are striving to become members, all those who are heirs, successors from our illustrious estate going back to time immemorial. Time immemorial is a time out of mind. Okay? It does not even involve your flesh. All right? It's the time out of mind, or that gap in that time of who you were that you do not remember. So it's my obligation as the reincarnation of the Son of God to realign your understanding as well as your consciousness that you can understand what it is that you were here and called to do on this planet we call Earth. All right? It's very important. We're going to be discussing Genesis, the first to the 31st verse of chapter 1. Okay? Genesis first, chapter 1, verses 1 through 31. Okay? For all those who are going to be viewing today, will be one of the best lectures you ever heard. Okay? All right? So we're going to deal with who we are before the creation of the world. Okay? Before the creation of the world. So we're going to go back into a time and era before the creation of that world, where we existed as what we call etheric person or etheric people by way of having what we call an etheric composition, okay, an etheric body, okay. This is why it's called Genesis, all right, the beginning versus genocide, the ending, okay. We know genocide deals with destroying one's genes, one's genetics, one inheritance, okay, versus Genesis, the beginning of one genealogy, one ethnicity, one's identity, all right? Okay, which we go back to the first origin, okay? The first origin of our true state. Once again, this is going to be a beautiful lecture, a lesson as well. This is actually our book. I put together a small pamphlet for all members of the Third Typical English Church of England, and I'm qualified by going to sources to validate it, which majority will be by Wikipedia, and its references and sources there. Okay, so we'll get started in 1 second. Okay. Once again, I'd like to put on the record that I'm just like you, a physical being, what you call a human being, Homo sapien, a sentient being, but I'm conscious as a sentient being about who I am before I became a human being. This is what you must understand. All right, because where time never was, we were not. As the life of time began, uh, if the lifetime began, when we become, the time will become will be no more. All right, so we understand. He who writes your book sets your timeline. Time never was when we was not. The life of time began. When man began, the time will come when man will be no more. Okay, so we must understand that they wrote our books about who we are. All right, to set the standard for how we will perceive ourselves. All right, so we must understand that we must go through their information and realize that all of it based off observation. Okay, observation. All you receiving is what we call messages. All right, messages. All right, information in the form of what we call messages. All right, which cause what we call action potential. All right, and action potential. We're going to start from Genesis because it said in the beginning, God created the heaven and earth. We understand that Genesis means to deal with the genetics, okay? The genetics before the heavens and the earth, okay? We know when we say the earth, we're talking about the physical or the solid rock, but they also refer to the earth by way of the sphere or the globe or the terrestrial sphere in which we or the human population exists in, as well as all things that are created, all right, along with this world, okay, which we call planet Earth. So this is going to be a beautiful lesson for all those who claim to be Christians, Jews, Muslims, Hebrews, Moors. All right. How are you going to prove who we are? Okay. How are you going to prove that you are a child of God? Okay. How are you going to prove that you are, in fact and indeed, a child of God from any reference book that you're talking about? And can you qualify that you are a child of God? Okay. These must be taken away from the abstract view and put into a concrete view so that it could be a concrete transition. All right. A concrete transition. All right. So this lesson is for all those who think that the third to be in the Church of England and the King of England, i.e. King Joseph Jefferson, attended of God for the fifth kind of Van Jews, son of Jerusalem, the reincarnation of that person who said in the image or personified or incarnated as that Christ-like being, which was King Edgar the Peaceful, which I'm the reincarnation of, and I come to do the will of my Father. Okay? As it was in heaven, so should it be done on earth. All right? So watch how this message, because angels are messengers, okay, here on earth. Angels are messengers here on earth. An angel is considered what we call an extraterrestrial, which has immortality, okay? An extraterrestrial, which has immortality. But your understanding of an extraterrestrial, and the immortality of the extraterrestrial is wrong, okay? It's wrong because you're looking at it from a physical perception, all right? A physical perception that originated from what we call a stimuli, okay? A stimulation, something stimulated you to do what you do or to act like you act or to think like you think. Something stimulated, all right, that action, okay? Which is a result of what we call transduction, okay? So we got a lot to talk about today. Once again, this is going to be one of the best lectures I ever did. I'm going to draw from the book or small pamphlet that I prepared that came from the sources that I reviewed. And I drew from those sources because, like I said, ain't nothing new under the sun. All right. So all those who claim to be create new literature, they're lying to you. Okay, they're lying to you. All right, and they're in no position to tell a story that they don't know who the teller of the story is. Okay, because he could be lying. All right, especially somebody who exists on this planet. So we're going to show you that we existed prior to the planet being created, based upon our true composition, which will be restored momentarily. Okay, so let's get with it. Any questions, please post them in the chat. Hopefully, I have some moderators to join me. But like I said, you definitely need to pay attention. All right. As of this point, there will be no more playing around. Okay. No more playing around. All right. We're getting into the beginning of the Bible, which you call Genesis, but I call Eukaryotis Genesis. All right. Eukaryotis Genesis. So let's get started. Well, we're going to start with your book, Genesis 1. Reading Archbishop Belmont from the House of Belmont. Genesis. Genesis. Okay? Genesis, the beginning. All right, according to your biblical story. All right, very important. We're gonna get a narrative of the abstract, in which majority of 99.9% of the people perceive this is what is actually going on. All right. Well, I'm letting you know this not, because when God is speaking, He's not speaking because there's no physical being on here yet. And in order to speak, you need a physical thorax. All right, to speak. All right. This is part of the physical makeup, which we discussed. All right, in regards to how we perceive ourselves based off transduction. All right. So transduction is very important in perceiving what's been said to you and identifying what you perceive to be truth and falsehood about yourself in order to qualify who your true self really is, okay? And who your true self originated from, all right? So check it out, Genesis 1, from your New International Version. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So we're talking about the heavens and the earth. All right. When you say the heavens and the earth, you're talking about the terrestrial sphere, everything within the sphere. Okay. All right. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. Okay. So when it says that the earth was formless and empty, meaning that you couldn't see no land, but that never meant that land did not exist, because that's the reason why you call it earth. Okay? You must understand that. That's the reason why it's called earth, because earth is denotes as the terra, the actual physical or solid mass. All right, solid mass. All right, we know more water is made of mass, but it's not solid. It's a liquid form. Okay, they say in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the water. Okay, so this is after the world was created from its true origin, which came from the explosion of what we call a gravitational collapse, which was discussed in a second, right? 3. And God said, let there be light. There was light. God saw that light was good, and he separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was the evening, and there was the morning, which was called the first day. So this is what you called in the Hebrew Zohar book, or you had the Mishrash, the Talmud, and the Zohar, all right, we discussed in a little while, all right? But this is all about cosmology, okay? Cosmology, the study of the universe, the study of all that's within the universe, and how you play a part in that universe, okay? 6. And God said, let there be a vault between the waters to separate water from water. So God made the vault and separate the waters under the vault from the waters above it. And it was so. God called the vault sky. He didn't call it earth. He called it the sky. And there was evening and there was morning and the second day. Oh, y'all better listen to me. Y'all better listen. The clarity of what I'm saying is coming to you as I speak. Okay? So I'm interpreting what the Bible said before I even go into the book I wrote to qualify, because the Bible, Genesis, is nothing but a book about genetics. Okay? And I'm explaining to you right here of the genetic, whether you're talking about geobiology or astrobiology, because without astrobiology, you wouldn't have geobiology, which is the study about the earth. All right? Y'all hold on. All right, which is study about the earth. 9. So we dealt with the sky, we deal with light and day. We deal with before that was created, when the earth was nothing but a darkness, and water was on the face of the earth. Okay, water was on the face of the earth. We know the sky was there, all right, but it wasn't. It didn't have that vault there yet. All right, what no vault being put there. All right, the vault was to separate the outer sphere, which we call the universe, from what we call the terrestrial sphere, which we call planet Earth, and all that exists within it. Okay? 9. And God said, let the water under the sky, okay, be gathered to one place, and let dry ground appear. Okay? It was so. God called the dry ground land, and gathered waters he called seas, and God saw that it was good. So it means that he ain't saying that there was no ground, but the ground land started to appear, which he started calling land, which made it earth. Because if the earth or the spirit was just water, then what would be there to maintain or to hold that water? Because we know water is a liquid form and must be maintained. It changes from solid, liquid to gas. Gas. Okay, you must understand that. 11. Then God said, let the land produce vegetation, seed, bearing plants, and trees on the land that bear fruit with seed in it, according to their various kinds. And it was so. This is genetics. The land produced vegetation, plants bearing seeds according to their kind, and trees bearing fruits and seed in it according to their kind. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening and the morning and the third day. And God said, let there be lights in the vault of the sky to separate the day from the night, and let them serve as signs to mark sacred times and days and years. And let them be lights in the vaults of the sky to give light on the earth. And it was so. God made two great lights, the greater lights to govern the day, and a lesser night to govern the night. He also made the stars. God set them in a vault of the sky to give light on earth, to govern the day, to govern the day and the night, and to separate light from darkness. And God saw that it was good, and there was evening, and there was morning, the fourth day. Okay, so you're talking about all this. It's all about cosmology. All right, before the creation of this planet, as well as all the other planets within this universe. Okay, which came or resulted from what we call gravitational collapse, which we'll discuss in a little while. 20. God said, let the waters teem with living creatures and let birds fly above the earth across the vault of the sky. So God created the great creatures of the sea and every living thing which the water teems and that moves upon in it, according to their kind, and every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. God blessed them and said, be fruitful and increase in the number and fill the waters in the sea, and let the birds increase on the earth. And there was evening and there was morning, the fifth day. Now remember, when God's speaking, God's not speaking physically. He's speaking based upon the messages that derive from the genetic material that's inside you. Okay? Whether you're talking about the earth, whether you're talking about the sky, whether you're talking about creatures, you all have a genetic material. You all have a genetic marker. Okay? Okay, whether it's extraterrestrial or whether it's terrestrial, is a molecular marker that makes you different from any other uh, thing on this planet that exists based off is genetic, which is based upon the story you call Genesis, but you understand the story wrong. Verse 24. God said, let the land produce living creatures according to their kind, the livestock, the creatures that move along the ground, and the wild animals, each according to its kind. And it was so. God made the wild animals according to their kind, the livestock according to their kind, and all the creatures that move along the ground according to their kind. And God saw that it was good. Verse 26. And God said, let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness. It said mankind, a kind of man. Okay? It said, let us make mankind a kind of man in our image. So whatever man they created was not the image that was here on earth, because it was a man, it was the image of them who didn't live, who was not in the image of those who were considered what they call Homo sapiens. So it said, let us, not just one, but us. We know us based upon genetic materials, based upon genetic material, which is not one single gene, but a bunch of genes, all right, which we're going to talk about in a second. Then God said, let us make mankind in our image, because we know when one created an image based upon the embryonic composition of the egg, which restores the genetic material of the likeness of the composition or the organism within that embryo, or which we call eukaryotic cell. Okay, the eukaryotic cell is the multi-cell that allows for cell development to mature or to what we call mutate. Okay, from 0-dimensional, 1-dimensional, 2-dimensional to 3-dimensional, which you're on now. Okay, right? We're not looking at this from physical over understand. We're looking at it from a genetic, biological, as well as astrobiological significance. All right. This is how you must perceive this lesson. Okay. So once again, then God said, let us make mankind in our image. And remember, we're not reading this in lieu of our physical being that we see here, because that's based off our perception, which I'm going to prove to you is the wrong perception. Then God said, let us make mankind. So God existed before mankind, a kind of man, and the image that God was, which was not the image of mankind. They said, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, over the livestock and over the wild animals, and over all creatures that move along the ground. Verse 27. So God created mankind in his own image, and in the image of God, he created them, male and female, he created them. Once again, he's talking about genes, okay? Genetic material, mitochondria, DNA, okay? This is what we're talking about. Verse 28. God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful and increase in numbers, fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky and over every living creature that moves on the ground. Verse 29. And God said, I give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the earth, and every tree that has fruit with seed in it. They will be yours for food. And to all the beasts of the earth, and to all the birds in the sky, and all the creatures that move along the ground, everything that has the breath of life in it, I give every green plant for food. And it was so. Remember that breath of life, okay? Nothing on this planet will exist without that breath of life that allows you to exist within this terrestrial sphere. Okay? We must understand that. 31. God saw all that he had made, and it was very good. And there was evening, there was morning, and the sixth day. I'm going to go back to that verse, this verse again. And God saw all that he had made, and it was very good. And there was evening, and there was morning, and the sixth day. Genesis 1 to 31st. Y'all better go back and make sure y'all read that, not from your physical comprehension, but from your genetic consciousness, because you are genetically tied to the consciousness of who your true self is, which has yet to be understood or recognized or become effective in this present day. Because I'm going to show you that this is who I am. All right. This is who I am. So we read Genesis. All right. Without Genesis, none of the other books in the Bible would exist. All right. Once again, without Genesis, none of the other books are irrelevant. Okay. I'm not sure telling you or reading Genesis or interpreting Genesis from the perception of what we receive to what we call what's the term? Um, what we call the message that we receive from what we perceive by based off what we're reading, because that's called transduction. All right, transduction, which we're going to talk about again today. So let's go into my actual book or my actual pamphlet for members of the Third Typical English Church, so they can understand themselves before they were created in this physical, because God created you in the image, and male and female, he created thee. So if you were created in the image of God, male and female, and in the form of what we call a kind of man, all right, a kind of man here on earth, then that means that we must transition back to our original state, okay, which we call the exerate self, okay, the etheric being, okay, dealing with ether, all right? Let's get there. This is the book, Children of God. This book will be available for purchase as well. Eukaryo Genesis The Beginning, okay? A lot of everything that we just read from Genesis 1 through 31, verse, Genesis chapter 1, verses 1 through 31, will be explained to you in Eukaryo Genesis The Beginning, which is the pamphlet or document, religious document that we use to qualify who we are within this terrestrial sphere, which we call planet Earth. So we did not originate here, but you are what your forefathers were without contradiction, okay? Time never was when we were not. At the life of time when we begin, the time will become when we be no more, because we know we are who we are based off the genetic material that's in us, that's been confined, it's been sealed, it's been shut off by what we call genocide, okay? Genocide versus Genesis, the beginning of where you come from. When they created genocide, means they cut off that memory, all right? The memory, which we call engram, which is that stored information about who you are within your cellular DNA. Okay? Your cellular DNA, which was here before the planet Earth was created. It's called an extraterrestrial. We are extraterrestrial, okay? Beings here on Earth, all right? We are extraterrestrials here on planet Earth. I'm about to prove it to you, right? Eukaryo Genisis The Beginning. When we question a topic concerning God, angels, extraterrestrial life, alien life, or colloquially simply aliens, is life which does not originate from Earth. Okay? No extraterrestrial life has yet been conclusively detected. Such life might range from simple forms such as prokaryotes to intelligent beings, possibly bringing forth civilization that might be far more advanced than a human species. Okay? The Drake equation speculates about the existence of sapient life elsewhere in the universe. This type of science of extraterrestrial life is known as astrobiology. Okay? Astrobiology, the study of the stars. Okay? And it says such life, which we consider extraterrestrial life that does not exist on that planet, but could be found on this planet, is called prokaryotes. Prokaryotes. Okay? So remember that word. That's why it's highlighted. It's dark. Okay? Everybody write that word down. Earth, right? Archaeobacteria. Earth is the third planet from the sun and the only astronomical object known to harbor life. Very important. This is enabled by Earth being an ocean world. Okay? An ocean world, the only one in the solar system sustaining living surface called water. Okay? Very important to understand that because Earth is the third planet from the sun. The further you go out, the less absence that you have of water, because we know water is a form of what we call condensation, which we know as photosynthesis. All right. So the further away you are from the sun, the further the influence that the sun has on you. Okay. We must understand that. Earth has a dynamic atmosphere which sustains Earth's surface's conditions to protect it from most meteorites and UV light at entry. Okay, this is called it's called radiation. Okay, it's called radiation. It has a composition of primarily nitrogen and oxygen. Water vapors is widely present in the atmosphere, forming clouds that cover most of our planet. The water vapors act as a greenhouse gas, and together the other greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, particularly carbon dioxide, CO2, creates the conditions for both liquid surface water and water vapors to persist via the capturing of energy from the sun's light, i.e., photosynthesis. Okay? Everybody understand that? I hope you do. The oldest material found in the solar system is dated to be 4.5682 point plus 0.002 minus 0.004 GA, whatever that means, which a billion years ago, all right, by 4.54 plus 0.04 GA. The primordial Earth had formed. The bodies in the solar system formed and evolved with the sun. You hear that? The bodies and the solar system formed and evolved with the sun, meaning a state of evolution. In theory, a solar nebular partition is a volume out of a molecular cloud by a gravitational collapse, which begins to spin and flattens into a circumstellar disk. And that planet goes out of that disk for itself. And then the planet goes out of that disk with the sun. Okay, so this is the way that our planet Earth was created as a result of what we call a gravitational collapse. Okay, the gravitational collapse was a result of the creation of our universe, which consists of our planets. All right, it's very important. It's very important for you to understand that. So just to make sure that I didn't just post and just say anything, let's go to gravitational collapse. Because this gets into what we call general theory of relativity, all right? General theory of relativity, which deals with gravity, space-time, all right? Space-time gravitational effect, which deals with black holes. Notice you don't see me trying to use all big words, all right? I'm gonna give it to you plain and simple. If the word is big, then you can't blame me for that. But I don't say a whole bunch of big words, but actually showing you actually nothing. Okay, there's a difference when I teach gravitational collapse. A gravitational collapse is a contraction of an astronomical object due to the influence of its own gravity. Okay, which tends to draw matter inward towards the center of gravity. Gravitational collapse is the fundamental mechanism for structure formation in the universe. All right, because we know everything was created by way of the what we call a black hole, and a black hole resulted from what we call a supernova. All right, a supernova, a star collapse. All right, a star collapsing. Over time, it's called a black hole. Over time, an individual relatively smooth distribution of matter after sufficient accretion may collapse to form pockets of higher density, such as stars or black holes. As a clandestine form of gravitational collapse, the gradual gravitational collapse of an interstellar medium into clumps of molecular clouds of potential protostars is the burst of a star. The compression caused by the collapse raises the temperature until thermonuclear fusion occurs at the center of a star, at which point the collapse gradually comes to a halt at the outward thermal pressure balances the gravitational forces. The star then existed in a state of dynamic equilibrium. During the star evolution, the star might collapse again and reach several new states of equilibrium. Okay? You must understand this. All right, so we're going to go back to the Eukaryo Genesis, my book, my pamphlet. Origin of life, earliest known life form, and the history of life. Okay, so we're going in and showing you how we came about before we even it was created. All right, just through the process of understanding astrobiology. If you didn't come from the stars, then you don't know astrobiology. Okay, this is why Albert Einstein had a hard time. All right, he had a hard time understanding astrobiology. He only had enough to use what he had to work with, but he didn't understand astrobiology because that's not his makeup. Okay, so you just interpreting something that you really don't understand. Okay, let's show him. Let me show you why. Origin of life, earliest known life form, and the history of life. This is why this book is called Eukaryo Genesis. All right, which is the genesis or the beginning, as told by genetic. All right, which has the messages for your coming into existence. All right, this is when Genesis 1 said, and God said. When God says something, he's giving you information, which is a message for you to interpret that message. Okay? It's very important for you to understand that. Origin of life, earlier known life forms, and the history of life. Chemical reactions led to the first self-replicating molecule about 4 billion years ago. Half a billion years later, the last common ancestor of all chemical life arose. The evolution of photosynthesis allowed the sun's energy to be harvested directly by life forms. The resultant molecular oxygen O2 accumulated in the atmosphere and due to the interaction with ultraviolet solar radiation formed a protective ozone layer O3 in the upper atmosphere. The incorporation of smaller cells the incorporation of smaller cells within larger ones resulted in the development of complex cells called eukaryotes. Did you see that? Here's your sources. Berkner L.B. Marshall L.C. 1965 on the origin and rise of oxygen concentration in the Earth's atmosphere. Okay, there's a source for you. So we see eukaryotes, which is the multi-cell cells that contain the mitochondrial DNA for all life forms on this planet, versus prokaryotes. Prokaryotes. All right. Now what we're going to talk about. The oldest known fossilized prokaryotes were laid down approximately 3.5 billion years ago. Now, we just read that prokaryotes are extraterrestrial. All right? Prokaryotes are extraterrestrial cells. All right? Which page are we in? Page 2. Let's go to page 1. Right? When we question the topic concerning God, angels, extraterrestrial life, and alien life, or colloquially simply alien, is life which does not originate from Earth. No extraterrestrial life has been conclusively detected. Such life might range from simple forms such as prokaryotes to intelligent beings, possibly bringing forth civilization that might be far more advanced than human beings species, which resulted from eukaryotes. Okay, which is why it's called, or this book is called, Eukaryo Genisis. All right. This is why it's called Eukaryo Genesis. Eukaryo Genesis. Back to page 2. Right here. The oldest known fossil of prokaryotes were laid down approximately 3.5 billion years ago, only about 1 billion years ago after the formation of the Earth's crust. You hear that? So prokaryotes are extraterrestrial, but they were found in fossilized here on planet Earth in the Earth's crust. All right? Y'all all heard that. Eukaryotes only appear in the fossils recorded later and may have formed from symbiosis of multiple prokaryote ancestors. So the eukaryotes are ancestors of the prokaryotes, which are extraterrestrial that exist outside the planet before this planet was created. All right, which we know came along with what we call the gravitational collapse of what we call a star. Okay, this is fact. You can't dispute this, brothers and sisters. All right, so we see. The oldest known fossilized prokaryotes were laid down approximately 3.5 billion years ago, only about 1 billion years after the formation of the Earth's crust. Eukaryotes only appeared in the fossil recorded later, may have formed in the endosymbiosis of the multiple prokaryote ancestors. The oldest known fossil eukaryotes are about 1.7 billion years old. However, some genetic evidence suggests eukaryotes appeared as early as 3 billion years ago. All right? While Earth is the only place in the universe where life is known to exist, some have suggested that there is evidence on Mars of fossils or living prokaryotes. See Christian M. 2006 08, or the month of whatever month that is, 08, and it says that after 10 years, Drew believes life on Mars, Associated Press on space.com. Scott E.R. February 1999, origins of the carbonate, magnetite, sulfide assemblies, and Martian meteorites, ALH 84001, the Journal of Geophysical Research. So there's a source. All right. So since we're talking about prokaryotes, and eukaryotes, prokaryotes, and eukaryotes, forgive me for pronouncing wrong, that which we know that prokaryotes occurred outside of this planet because it was considered extraterrestrial. All right. which start the offspring for living things, okay, here on this planet, which is other from the Eukaryo yolks, all right, which both are fossilized that goes back billions of years ago, okay, billions of years ago. While Earth is the only place in the universe where life, oh, I just read that, okay, let's qualify that. Earth. Origin of life and evolution. Chemical reactions led to the first self-replicating molecular molecules about 4 billion years ago. A half billion years later, the last common ancestors of all current life forms arose. The evolution of photosynthesis allowed the sun's energy to be harvested directly by the life form. The resultant molecular oxygen O2 accumulated in the atmosphere and due to the interaction with ultraviolet solar radiation formed protective ozone layer O3 in the upper atmosphere. There's your source, right? There's your source, everyone. The incorporation of smaller cells with larger ones resulted in the development of complex cells called eukaryotes. All right. The true molecular organism formed cells within colonies became increasingly specialized, aiding in the absorption of harmful ultraviolet radiation by the ozone layer. Life colonized the Earth's surface. Let's define prokaryote and prokaryote and eukaryote. Just pronounce wrong once again. Forgive me. One, a eukaryote, less commonly spelled prokaryote, is a single cell organism whose cell lacks a nucleus and other membrane bound organelles. Okay? Once again, a prokaryote, less commonly spelled prokaryote, is a single cell organism with whose cell lacks, does not have a nucleus and other membrane, both organelles, bound organelles. We know that the prokaryotes and the eukaryotes were both found uh, 3.5 billion years ago. Okay, we have the evidence to prove it. Okay, and it said that there's a difference between both of them. Okay, the prokaryotes came before the eukaryotes. Okay, which were all originated with this planet, but we know that one of them did not originate the planet because it was considered an extraterrestrial genetic material. Okay, called the prokaryote, but it has no nucleus and no membrane. Okay, 2. The eukaryotes constitute the remain of the eukarya or the eukaryotous organism whose cell has a membrane-bound nucleus. So one has it and one does not. Okay? One has it and one does not. All animals, plants, fungi, and many unicellular organisms are eukaryotes. You hear that? So all animals, plants, fungi, and many unicellular organisms are eukaryotes because why? Eukaryotes are organisms whose cells have a membrane-bound nucleus, which gives the ability to be able to multiply. Okay, unicell. Okay, they are able to what they call mitosis. All right, they are able to change. All right. 4. Archaea is a domain of single-cell organisms. These microorganisms lack cell nucleus and are therefore prokaryotic. Okay, so we know that the single-cell nucleus and membrane are those that are what we call prokaryotes, which are archaea, as you can see here. All right, we must make that connection. All right, in regards to the genetic material that was put here on Earth, as God said it in Genesis 1. Okay, God said these things, right? He didn't speak it, but he implanted it in the genetic material. All right, through what we call a process of transduction. Okay, transduction. The transduction is the ability to be able to translate. All right, translate what we call brain waves or do what we call neuron oscillation. All right, and those brain waves, which are what we call consist of what we call energy, are then converted or changed into what we call a stimuli, which creates what we call an electronic signal. Okay, a signal. All right, which gives us what we call uh, what they call action potential. Okay, action potential means the ability to be able to act upon that stimuli. Okay, to act upon that stimuli. So once again, the prokaryote, less commonly spelled prokaryote, is a single-cell organism whose cell lacks a nucleus and other membrane-bound organelle. It's also called an archaea, because an archaea is a domain of single-cell organisms. These microorganisms lack cell nucleus and are therefore prokaryotic, contrast to point 2, the eukaryotes, which constitute the domain of the eukaryota organism whose cell has a membrane bound nucleus, which, according to point 3, all animals, plants, fungi, and many unicellular organisms are considered. Right? We must understand that. 5. Asgard. Asgard is considered an archaea. It's a prokaryote. Okay, once again, Asgard is considered archaea or a prokaryote. Okay, it is not a eukaryote. It gave birth to the eukaryote, which was the method for all animals, plants, fungi, and many other unicellular organisms to come into being. Okay, we must understand that. 5. Asgard or Asgardiochaetia is a proposed superphylum consisting of a group of archaea that contains eukaryotic signature proteins. It appears that eukaryotes, the domain that contains the animal, plants, and fungi, emerged within Asgard. Did you hear that? So we know Asgard is where the archaea exists. Asgard are known as archaea, pronounce the name, forgive me. Archaea, which is called a prokaryotes, all right, a prokaryote, all right. So it says archaea is the domain of single-cell organisms. These microorganisms lack cell nucleus and are therefore prokaryotic, all right. And these all live in what we call Asgard, okay. They all live in Asgard, and they gave birth to what we call the eukaryotes, which exist in all animal, plants, fungi, and many other unicellular organisms, which are called the eukaryotes. Okay, so Asgard, as we see in point 5, or Asgardiochaetia, is a proposed superphylum consisting of a group of archaea that contains eukaryotic signature proteins, and it appears that the eukaryotes, the domain that contains the animal, plants, fungi emerged within Asgard. Okay, not just Asgard, but all those who were descendants of Asgard or the entities Asgard. You found Lokia Arcadia, all right, as is a proposed filium of the Arcadia. Okay, Loki Arcadia is a proposed filium of Arcadia. All right. Then you have Dora Arcadia. All right. Dora Arcadia from samples taken from the White Oak River in North Carolina, named in reference to Thor, another Norse god. White Oak River estuary in the United States contained Odin, Odin Arcadia and Hemdalia Arcadia, following the Norse deities naming convention. These groups were named for Odin and Hemdal, respectively. Researchers therefore named the superfilium containing the microbe Asgard after the home of the gods in Norse mythology. Okay, does everyone understand that? Do you understand that? Okay, so we understand that Odin, Thor, Hemdal, Loki, all names originated from the deity of Asgard, all had to do with biology terms. Okay, they had to do with biology terms, whether you're dealing with astrobiology or geobiography. Okay, whether you're talking about astrobiology or geobiography. Why? Because they're talking about the prokaryotic cell versus eukaryotic cell. The prokaryotic cell is an extraterrestrial cell that was implanted here on what we call planet Earth and gave life to all life form as a result of the Eukaryo yolk. Okay, and we know the Eukaryo yolk lived in what we call Asgard. Okay, we know Asgard is a fictitious name or a mystical name given to deities going back to Odin, Thor, Loki, which were names given to Northern gods. All right, which are in the science world known for what we call genetic material. They're known for genetic material. Let's see why. Genetics is the study of genes, genetic variation, hereditary in organisms. It is an important branch in biology because hereditary is vital to organism evolution. All right. Gregor Mendel, a Moravian Augustinian friar, worked in the 19th century in Brno, was the first to study genetics scientifically. Mendel studied trait inheritance patterns and the way traits are handed down from parent to offspring over time. He observed that organisms, pea plants, inherit traits by way of discrete units of inheritance. This term still used today is a somewhat ambiguous definition of what is referred to as genes. Okay? Hence the word genesis. Trait inheritance and molecular inheritance mechanisms of genes are still primarily principles of genetics in the 21st century, but modern genetics have expanded to study the function and behavior of genes. Gene structures and functions, variations, and distributions are studied within the context of the cell, the organism, e.g., dominance. And within the context of a population, genetics has given rise to a number of subfields, including molecular genetics, epigenetics, and population genetics. Organism study within the broad field spans the domains of life, archaeo, bacteria, and eukarya. Okay? All these exist within what we call Asgard, and Asgard was the home of what we call the god. So if you're a god, you must understand yourself in a genetic sense, okay? From the genes, because genes are what you're made of. It determines who you are. And from what you are is what you're going to become, all right? From beginning to end, all right? So we understand genetics has all to do with archaea and bacteria, which you know are prokaryotes and eukaryotes. You know, prokaryotes are cells that has no nucleus or membrane versus eukaryotes, where it has a cell a nucleus, and the cell has a nucleus and membrane. All right, which gave birth to all other animals that resulted from what we call evolution. Okay, evolution. Go back to the book. Asgard. Okay, Asgard. Scientific classification: domain, Arcadia, kingdom, Proteo, Proteo, Archaeoto. If I'm pronouncing wrong, please forgive me. Superphilium, Asgard. Okay, philia. Right. So you see a map there. All right. Now you see a map. Let's pull this map up a little bit and get a better view. Right. As you can see, this is the map of what we call the landmass as well as the Earth. So Earth sphere and water sphere, okay, which exists in what we call planet Earth. All right. As we can see here, the black dots represent hydrothermal vent sediments. The blue represents hot spring sediments. The light green represents mangrove sediments. The dark green represents microbial mat. The pink represents marine water. The dark red represents marine sediments. The dark brown represents estuary sediments. The orange represents freshwater hydric soil, and the purple represents terrestrial soil. All right, and as you can see on the map, whether you're talking about North America or you're talking about Europe, Africa, and Asia, all right, we see that the majority are in North America. Okay, majority of in North America. Okay, you got two of them in what they call Europe, one in Africa, and two in Asia. Okay, two in Asia. All right, and you can look up the color coordination to determine the reference in lieu of the color in regards to uh, the what we call those genetic materials that originate in what they call Asgard. All right, and Asgard is not up there in spook space. They make a reference to Asgard right here on planet Earth. All right, Terra. Can we see that? All right, in regards to what we call the prokaryocytes and the prokaryotes and the eukaryotes. Okay, and we know the eukaryotes are terrestrial cells that also originate on Earth based upon them being fossilized going back 4 billion years ago, as well as eukaryotes who were also fossilized here on Earth going back 3 billion years ago. All right, so you must understand what we're working with. All right, let's get another graph that we look at. See, we already discussed uh, um, planet Earth and the creation of planet Earth, which resulted in eukaryotes, which resulted from prokaryotes, all right, which are considered to be what we call extraterrestrial, okay? Extraterrestrial, and they are the foundation for what we call mitochondrial DNA. Mitochondrial DNA are resulted from what we call eukaryotes. We know that the foundation for the eukaryote is the prokaryote cell. All right. As we see here is a diagram. Adam just deals with the creation of Earth itself as a result of what we call gravitational collapse of a star. Okay. All right. All this deals with what we call nuclear biology. Okay. All deals with nuclear biology. Right. So we can see here atoms, lipids. Lipids deals with compounds resulting in what we call vitamin A, B, D, E, a couple more. Then you got protein, you got flu viruses. All right. These will, that all existed prior to that that the genetic material that gave the ability for all other life forms to exist on this planet. All right. You have mitochondrial DNA, you have animal cells, plant cells. Okay. Once again, animal cells, plant cells. All right. Results in unicellular process of unicellular being able to multiply. All right. Self-generate. Human eggs, frog eggs, chicken eggs, ostrich eggs, as well as female embryos have the ability to procreate based off what we call the eukaryote. Okay. The eukaryote. Let's see that. This is where your mitochondrial DNA comes from. For all plants, all animals, and everything that has a unicellular evolved from eukaryotes, right? Eukaryotes constitute the domain of eukarya and eukaryota organisms whose cells have a membrane-bound nucleus, contrast to those which are prokaryotes. All animals, plants, fungi, and many unicellular organisms are eukaryotes. They constitute a major group of life forms alongside the two groups of prokaryotes, bacteria and archaea, which existed before eukaryotes. Eukaryotes represents a small minority of the number of organisms, and we know organisms based upon the number of cells. Okay? We must understand that. But given their generally much larger size, their collective global biomass is much larger than that of prokaryotes, right? Eukaryotes seemingly emerged within the Asgard archaea, which we read, and are closely related to Hemdella archaea. These implies, all right, there you go, that same diagram. This implies, and look where a majority of them originate from. North America. So you want to talk about life originating in Africa when according to genetics, it didn't. It didn't originate in Africa. It originated here in North America because you have the fossilized evidence to support my analysis. Okay? Support my analysis. There you go, right there. The sources, right there on Wikipedia. They say make up. I'm not making this up. This implies that there are only two domains of life. Bacteria and archaea, which eukaryotes incorporated amongst the archaea. You hear that? Eukaryotes first emerged during the Proterozoic for himself. Proteroid, from pronouncing wrong, please forgive me. Proterozoic likely has flagellated cells. The leading evolutionary theory is that they were created by symbiogenesis between the anaerobic Asgard Arcadian and anaerobic Proteobacterium, which forms the mitochondria DNA. A second episode of symbiogenesis with a cyanobacterium creates the plant with chloroplast. Okay, here we go. Mitochondria DNA. mitochondria. Okay, we hear that, we see that, you should understand it. Okay, that's why this pamphlet is called Eukaryo Genesis. All right, because when God said, "Let us make man in our image as well as all things that exist in creation here on planet Earth," he was speaking from not with a physical, because physical was not created. He was speaking based off the message that was encoded in the genetic material through what we call transduction. Okay, transduction. Right. The Genesis, which in your Bible you call Genesis. You read Genesis, so you can see if you read Genesis and interpret what I'm reading to you, it's basically one and the same. All right, dealing with creation of all things. The Genesis, the process which created the eukaryotic cell in lineage. All right, this is called cell lineage. It is a milestone in the evolution of life, since eukaryotes include all complex cells and almost all multicellular organisms. You hear that? Life arose on Earth once it had cooled enough for oceans to form. The last universal common ancestor, Luca, was the organism which had ribosom, ribosomus, if I'm pronouncing wrong, please forgive me, ribosomus, and the genetic code. It has lived some 4 billion years ago. Did y'all hear that? It lived some 4 billion years ago. It gave the rise to two main branches of prokaryotic life, the Arcadian and bacteria, and what we call bacteria, which is all part of what we call Asgard, which gave birth to what we call the Eukaryo. It gave rise to two main branches of prokaryotic life, the bacteria and the archaea. From among these small cell rapidly dividing ancestors arose the eukaryote, which much larger cells, nuclear, and distinctive biochemistry. The eukaryotes form a domain that contains all complex cells and most types of multicellular organisms, including the animal, plants, and fungi. Did y'all hear that? And we know prokaryotic cell, which gave birth to eukaryotic cell, as originated outside the planet, which is considered to be an extraterrestrial, which results from astrobiology, the study of the universe, which we call cosmology. Okay, the study of the cosmos. All right, all dealing with this genetic material, this gene. That's why it's called Genesis. All right, this genetic material. Okay, the prokaryotic cell and the eukaryotic cell, right? Which the folklore call it Asgard. Okay, we know Asgard is the name for all the deities. You know, the most mischievous one was called Loki, god of shapeshifting. And metamorphosizing is a form of what we call shapeshifting. Okay, we must understand that. Okay, so we know prokaryotic cells are originated as extraterrestrial cells, okay, which was here before the creation of life, okay, on this planet, which resulted from eukaryotic cell, which was birthed from prokaryotic cell, which were extraterrestrial cells, which originated by way of the universe being created by a gravitational collapse, which we call a supernova, which is called a black hole, okay, which is called the study of the stars, astrobiology, okay. Astrobiology is a scientific field within the life and environmental sciences that studies the origin, early evolution, distribution, and future of life in the universe by investigating its uh, deterministic conditions and contingent events. As a discipline, astrobiology is found on the premises that life may exist beyond Earth. Did you hear that? So it's our obligation on Earth to find out if life exists outside of Earth, and we know it is because the evidence here on Earth about which is the evidence that exists outside of Earth, which is called a prokaryote, procaryo, prokaryote. Okay, Research in astrobiology comprises three main areas: the study of habitable environments in the solar system and beyond, the search for planetary biosignatures of past or present extraterrestrial life, and the study of the origin and early evolution of life on Earth. That's the Eukaryo, okay? That is the Eukaryo. We know that. We can see that now. That's why it's called Genesis, the beginning, okay? So in order for you to understand the beginning of us before we got on Earth, you must understand astrobiology, because that seed that was planted on Earth was a prokaryote, which is an extraterrestrial, which was not in the form of a human. Okay, so if we know that this this cell or genetic material gave birth to human form, then we can't perceive ourselves as human form. We must perceive ourselves as the etheric form, which is called beings of immortality. Okay, beings of immortality, and there's only two ways to obtain immortality: their abstract way and my concrete way. Okay, which is based upon memory. Okay, remembering who you are. All right, remembering who you are. We all term this as immortality. So when you're talking about life outside the planet, I don't give a damn what it is. Uh, uh, from a space rock to an alien. Okay, it all exists outside of this planet. If we know whatever that genetic material that gave birth to the Eukaryotes, we gave birth to everything on this planet here in this terrestrial sphere, we must give homage to. Okay, we must give homage to, and we know that for us to understand ourselves, because it said God said, all right? It didn't say a rock said or a plant said, it said God said, all right? And when God said, it's a form of speaking, okay, things into existence that are not in existence. And the only way that can happen is based off that material being within the DNA and not coming into existence by what they call multicellular manifestation, which is resulted from the eukaryote versus the prokaryote. The prokaryote has no membrane or nucleus. All right, don't have the genetic material for those, don't have the genetic material as the genetic material here on Earth, but gave birth to genetic material here on Earth for things to get underway. All right. Well, let's see. We are termed this immortality, which is the concept of eternal life in which some species possess, including humans. Okay, we know humans evolved along with everything else on this planet Earth. All right, plants, animals, plant animals, and bugs and everything else. Okay, so we understand that when we deal with immortality, it's not in the state that we live on within the state we perceive ourselves to be as human. Okay, some scientists, futurists, and philosophers have theorized about the immortality of the human being, with some suggest that human immortality may be achievable in the first few decades of the 21st century with the help of certain technologies such as mind uploading, contrast to digital immortality. All right? So we are able to achieve immortality by either two ways: mind uploading or digital immortality, because the digital immortality is what they want us to think is what's going on, and it's not happening that way. Because usually, when there's a mental, if a person's having a mental problem, the first thing they do is take a mental scan of you or a digital scan of you in regards to trying to calculate or determine the stress that's put upon the brain based off the mental uh, 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 the mental brain waves that are within this point uh, are not functioning properly based off what you call the consciousness. Okay, the consciousness of your perception. All right, because most of our perceptions are not conscious. All right, most of our perceptions are not conscious perceptions. All right, especially when it comes to the concept of what we call or talking about immortality. Okay? So we need to understand that. So it said once again, we all term this dealing with things extraterrestrial outside the planet versus things terrestrial inside the planet. And we know one of those things are what we call prokaryotic cells, which are extraterrestrial cells. All right. So for us to understand a prokaryotic cell, which is a cell or a gene, all right, we must understand it before we became physical, which only could be received from an etheric body. Okay, in the etheric body, because the etheric body also has a genetic material, because that's where the message comes from to us as physical beings. We are, as physical beings, interpreting messages from our etheric self, okay, through transduction, which is called transducing. Yes, we as physical beings are receiving messages from our etheric being through what we call transduction, okay? But the only way that can be done is through understanding the engrams, the message, the meaning of those messages, okay? The meaning of those messages, all right? And this is what we call a process, what we call mind uploading. Mind uploading, because your mind is not attached to your body. The brain is attached to your body. When they take you in there for a mental evaluation, they put you in a digital scanning, which takes a picture of your brain, the physical brain. The mind's not physical, so you can't take a scan of the mind. You can take a scan of the brain to try to determine what the mind is going through based off those signals, based off those impulses, which is the energy that flows through the brain as a result of what we call transduction to what we call somatic nervous system. And your somatic nervous system is resulted from what we call signals. Signals are based upon what we call receptor cells, and receptor cells are called neuron receptors. Okay, neuron receptors. Okay, yeah, neuron receptors. Let's get into this. Mind upload. It's the only way you're going to understand what's going through based off having a conscious perception or perception of consciousness, which is determined by your doctor. Okay, your doctor gives you a perception of your state of consciousness, and you should know that for yourself. Okay, you must know your state of consciousness for yourself. All right, because the mind was not created by them. So how you can try to interpret something that they didn't create? They didn't even create the brain. They try to interpret that through the digital machines that they're trying to create, which is not the proper upload. Okay, well, let's deal with the proper upload. Mind uploading. Mind uploading is the speculative process of whole brain emulation, in which a brain scan is used to completely emulate the mental state of the individual in a digital computer. Or so, in a digital computer. Now, they give you truth for lie. Because the digital computer is that machine that we were talking about that takes a scan of the brain, which tries to determine, based off that picture of the brain, what the mind is going through or the mental state of that individual. All right? Based off those signals that they receive, based off the stimuli they receive, based off the energy that travels through what they call that vacuum. Okay? We're going to get into this understanding. The computer would then run a simulation of the brain information processing such that it would respond in essentially the same way as the original brain as experiencing having a sentient conscious mind. I'm going to repeat that. Mind uploading is a speculative process of whole brain emulation in which a brain scan is used to completely emulate, you hear, copy, all right, the mental state of the individual in a digital computer. How could you copy the mental state of an individual in a digital computer? There's no way in hell you can do that. The computer would then run a simulation of the brain's information processing such that it would respond in essentially the same way as the original brain and experience having a sentient conscious mind. So when they put you onto that brain scanning machine and taking the digital scanning of the brain as it works, they can determine based off their perception of how a brain's supposed to work. Okay? All right? And their determination of the brain's function is based upon if it's function based off their perception of what consciousness is. Okay? We must understand that. And their perception of consciousness is wrong. Sentient beings, the simplest or most primitive form of cognition consisting of conscious awareness of stimuli without the association or that interpretation. Once again, sentient beings being the simplest or most primitive form of cognition consisting of the conscious awareness of stimuli. Once again, the conscious awareness of stimuli, which is based upon that signal. All right? That signal. What signal are we talking about? Okay? What signal? All right? So what signal? And that signal is what we're going to talk about now. This is called in physiology transduction, which is the translation of arriving stimulus into a action potentially by sensory receptors. It begins when stimuli changes the membrane potential of a receptor cell. Okay? Once again, transduction is the translation of arriving stimulus into the action potential. Okay? All right? To action potential. That means the reaction as a result of that stimuli. Okay? And the only way you take action is based off the translation of that stimuli, which resulted from the energy. Okay? The energy caused the stimuli, which caused the signal. Okay? Which you interpret through what we call your neuron receptors or sensory neuron, what we call receptor cell. Okay? That's what they're called. All right? A receptor cell converts the energy and a stimulus into an electrical signal. Once again, a receptor cell or a neuron or sensory neuron, or what we call a receptor cell or sensory neuron, or we call a sensory receptor, it converts the energy, okay, and a stimulus into an electrical signal. Receptors are broadly split into two categories, external and external. Okay, once again, external and external sensory stimuli. Okay, outside stimuli and inside stimuli. Okay, when you deal with the outside stimuli, it's based on what we call your what they call somatic system, which is called your nervous system. Okay, versus the internal sensory, which is based off the mental faculty. Okay, the mental faculties. All right, which is going to be determined by your etheric self, because the etheric has a mind as well. Okay, the etheric being has a mind as well, and the physical body should be the, the physical being must be acting based off the spiritual being or the etheric being. Okay, which you call spirit in the abstract world, and the concrete world is called an etheric being. Okay, transduction. So transduction is the ability to translate energy, be able to transfer incoming energy in the form of stimuli into what we call electronic signal. Okay? And the only way that can be done is by sensory receptors. And sensory receptors are called sensory neurons, or what we call receptor cells. All right? And this is called transduction. Okay? So we know that that signal resulted from the sun to what we call neuron oscillation, or what we call brain waves. Okay? We understand that signal, which resulted from the stimuli, which was converted, which is the conversion of that energy, because we know that receptor cells convert energy and a stimulus into an electrical signal. Signal, okay? So we see that we went from the energy which comes from the sun and we receive that signal by that stimuli, which is what we call that brain wave, okay, which you see here in the form of a wave, okay. That's the sun, okay. That's the wave, all right. And that wave can only be done by way of you collecting that information and then interpreting that information by a process, which calls a potential action of potential. An action potential. Boy, y'all better listen to me. Okay? Right? So you have the sun, all right, giving a signal by way of the energy that the sun gives off, by way of what we call a stimuli, okay, which causes a signal, an electrical signal that we interpret based upon our somatic nervous system, which is called our nervous system, okay, which is the brain had to make sense of, okay? The brain had to make sense of that, which is called transduction, the translation of that information coming in, all right? The only way the brain can make sense of the information coming in through by way of what we call transduction, which is the translation of that signal, which resulted from the stimuli, which resulted from the energy that was originated from the sun. Okay? The sun, which is nothing but a ball of energy. And energy moves. Okay? One, in the visual, which majority, because you see here in transduction, you have an eyeball. You have an eye. All right, for collection. You have a couple ways that you collect information or messages, which are called signals, which resulted from stimuli, which was caused by energy. Okay, there's only a couple ways. Let's go through those ways. One, in the visual system, sensory cells called rod and cone cells, and the retina converts the physical energy of light signals into electrical impulses that travel to the brain. Okay, did you hear that? In the visual system, sensory cells called rod and cone cells, and the retina converts the physical energy, that's the incoming energy, that's converted to what we call a stimuli, which creates a signal, okay, that you translate or interpret, which is what we call a message. That means that God said, and you act off what God said, and this is what you call action potential, okay? In the visual system, sensory cells called rod and cone cells, is the retina converts the physical energy of light signals into electrical impulses that travel to the brain. Two, in the auditory system, sound vibrations, mechanical energy are transduced into electrical energy by hair cells in the inner ear. That's two ways. In the olfactory system, ordering molecules in the mucus bind to G protein receptors on olfactory cells. Four, in the gustatory system, perception of five primary taste qualities, sweet, salty, sour, bitter, and humane savoriness depends on taste transduction pathways through taste receptor cells, G protein, ion channels, and effector enzyme. And five, in the somatosensory system, the sensory transduction mainly involves the conversion of the mechanical signals such as pressure, skin compression, stretch, vibration to electronic impulses through the process of mechanical transduction. Mechanical transduction. Mechanical transduction. All right. So most of our transduction, which is the translation of that incoming energy, which is information or a message, all right, which is incoming energy that is converted to what they call a stimuli, which causes a electrical signal. Okay, electrical signal, which you interpreted by your five faculties, which we just read. All right, so we're going to deal with the visual transduction based upon the first one, what they call visionary. All right, which is the first one. The majority of the time, that's how we interpret. based on what we see. Visual system. So let's deal with the visual transduction. Visual transduction, when we perceive ourselves, is based off the illustrations you see here on the screen. You see the intergumulatory system, which is basically the let me see, the body structures, sites of many sensory receptors. All right, sensory receptors. Then you have the skeletal system. Then you have the muscular system. Then you have the nervous system, which we call somatic system. Then you have the endocrine system, and then you have the cardiovascular system. Okay? These are all the 6 systems that we have. Once again, based upon the translation through transduction of the information coming in based off what we see with our visual eye. Okay? Because you need eyes to see this, y'all. What we're looking at on the screen, right? And the auditory systems. Be able to comprehend or translate the signals coming in by way of the stimulus that originated from the so-called converted energy, all right? Through what we call sensory neurons, or what we call sensory receptors, or what we call receptor cells, all right? So you have the intergumulatory system, which we see with the physical eyes, the skeletal system, which we know exists because you can put your bones, the muscular system, which we know we can see, as well as the nervous system, because we know the nervous system is where we feel, okay? The endocrine system, as well as the cardiovascular system. But which one is the most important at all the systems, okay? Which one is the most important out of the 6 systems that we see there? The nervous system. The most important system is the nervous system, okay? The nervous system. Why is that so? Let's see. Transduction prokaryotes, okay? We know what transduction means. It's to convert translation of converted energy resulting in a stimuli into an electrical signal, all right? And that originated from what we call prokaryotes, and we know prokaryotes are the original bacteria, archaea, that existed here on the planet that is considered an extraterrestrial uh, 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 genetic material that gave birth to everything that we see based upon transduction, based upon the 5 faculties that we have to make that determination, okay? To interpret the message or to interpret uh, the statement that God made in Genesis 1, okay? And God said, let there be. All things came to being by way of the prokaryotes, all right? Prokaryotes was that message, okay? That word that said become into existence, okay? Which resulted from the eukaryote, okay? So we know transduction resulted from transducing. So what is transducing? All right, or transduce, a transitive verb. Let's look at it. Let's define it. Transduction is the process by which a virus, all right, you hear that, transfers genetic material from one bacterium to another. Viruses called bacteriophages are able to infect bacterial cells and use them as a host to make more viruses. Okay, so you were dealing with prokaryotes making more, acting, being able to become unicellular by way of that host, which is eukaryotes. Okay, the host is eukaryotes, and that which used the host is the prokaryote. The host is the eukaryotes, and the one who uses the host is the prokaryotes. Okay, all right, and it allowed for the eukaryote to become multicellular or unicellular, okay? So it says transduction is a process, all right, by which a virus transfers genetic material from a bacterium to another. We know transduction is a translation of information or messages by way of converting energy into a stimuli by way of then creating an electrical signal, which is being interpreted by what we call the sensory neuron or the sensory receptor or the receptor cell. Okay? We must understand that. Viruses called bacteriophages are able to infect bacterial cells and use them as a host to make more viruses. So we are a host. This is why you have that's why you call it mitochondria DNA, because the physical body that we're composed of is nothing but a host to be used as a result of the genetic material that is used to create that host for the unicellular process to take place or the multicellular process to take place. After multiplying, these viruses assemble and occasionally remove a portion of the host cell's bacterial DNA. Later, when one of these bacteriophages infect a new host cell, this piece of bacterial DNA may be incorporated into the genome of the new host. Okay? We must understand that. So since we understand that transduction, which is the translation of the information or the information on the message that's converted into energy, which is the information that is converted into energy by way of the stimuli, which results in what we call an electrical signal. Okay, so what does transducing, which is a transitive verb, mean? Let's see. Transduced or transducing. One, to convert something, such as energy or a message. You hear that, y'all? Transduce or transduction is to convert something such as energy or message, which means transduction, the transferring, the translation of energy or message into stimuli, which creates an electrical signal. Two, to cause genetic material to undergo transduction. So genetic material undergoes transduction, which is the translation of that energy or message into a stimuli, which causes an electrical signal for us to act here on the physical plane. All right. And we know that resulting from what we call a mental faculty. All right. A mental faculty, because we know the physical being ain't made, does not come into existence because it resulted from the eukaryotes, which resulted from the prokaryotes, right? And we know the prokaryotes consider extraterrestrial, which is the information or the energy, all right, which resulted from the origin which we came from. Because we know that when we're dealing with uploading information or mental uploading, we're doing it based upon the original person that allowed the message to be transferred to us here on the physical plane. So you must be in tune with yourself, which we call your astral body. Okay? Your astral body. So let's talk about our astral body or our etheric body. The etheric body or ether body is a subtle body propounded in esoteric philosophies as the first or lowest layer in the human energy field or aura, not the human physical, not the human physical being, but of the energy field or aura. The etheric body is said to be the immediate contact with the physical body and to sustain it and connect it with higher body. It is also said to consist of a finer substances, more pure and composed of smaller particles than the ordinary matter of the physical plane. Did you hear that? Did you hear that? All right. The etheric body, because remember it said God created man in his own image. Okay. Male and female created things. Okay. So if we know male and female as human beings did not come about to the genetic material that was imposed in what we call the eukaryotic cell. We know the eukaryotic cell originated from prokaryotic cell, okay, which was the extraterrestrial cell that was implanted here on Earth 4 billion years ago. All right, but it exists before the creation of this planet, okay, that you call Earth. Second. We'll read that etheric body transduction. Okay. The etheric body, ether body, or aether body is a subtle body propounded in esoteric philosophies as the first or lowest layer in the human energy field or aura. The etheric body is said to be in immediate contact with the physical body. In contact, all right? So that means they're in constant communication, all right? And to sustain it and connect it with higher bodies. It also said to consist of a finer substance, more pure and composed of smaller particles than the ordinary matter of the physical plane. Okay, we must understand that. We know that the Holy Quran says that man is composed of a substance more. What's that? Man is composed of substance. Uh, man is composed of a substance. Something that fleshy eyes can't see. Don't quote me. I remember something in the Quran, on the Holy Quran, chapter 7, about that. All right. So if it states that this is what you should talk about, the etheric body. All right. And we say etheric body transduction means to translate or the translation or to interpret the energy or message by way of the stimuli, by way of which turns to what we call electrical signal, which is controls the physical body here that they call or composed of what they call ordinary matter here on what we call the physical plane. So the being we hear on the physical plane is not the same as the being on the etheric plane, okay? But they are connected. And the only way you can understand it connected is to do transduction, okay? Is through transduction, okay? Let's look at our composition. According to the ancient and medieval science, ether, alternatively spelled including ether, aether, or ether, also known as the fifth element or quintessence, is a material that fills the region of the universe beyond the terrestrial sphere. The concept of ether was used in several theories to explain several natural phenomena, such as the propagation of light and gravity. Okay, light and gravity. All right, general theory of relativity instead of special theory of relativity. And in the late 19th century, physics postulated that ether permeated space, providing a medium through which light could travel in a vacuum. That light traveling in the vacuum is that what we call empty space. Okay, it's that empty space before the matter. Okay, before the matter, that empty space is what's filled with antimatter. Okay, the empty space that we're talking about, ether, is the space that exists before matter came into existence, which is what we call the density. Okay, the density of matter. So it says here, ether. It says ether. Late 19th century physics postulated that ether permeated space, providing a medium through which light could travel in a vacuum. So ether permeated space, i.e., created space, providing a medium through which light could travel. All right? That energy, light is energy. One, what is a vacuum? A vacuum is space devoid of matter. okay? The word is derived from the Latin adjective vacus, neutral vacuum, meaning vacant or void. So it means that if you're existing as the ether, then you have no physical body because the physical body is made of matter, which is created by the Eukaryo, all right? And not the prokaryotes, because the prokaryotes are that which consists of that which is not matter, okay? It gave birth to matter, okay? The prokaryotes were created along with the universe, all right? When it was created by way of what we call a gravitational collapse, okay? General theory of relativity, what we call a black hole, okay? So that goes in what we call space-time. Space is the three-dimensional continuum containing position and direction. Its classical physics, physical space is often conceived in three linear dimensions, okay? So that's what matter consists of, occupying space, okay? You see that? Matter can only exist in space, but ether was there before that space was created for that matter. Okay? Y'all better realize I'm dropping heavy Jews here. 3. Modern physics. Space is a three-dimensional continuum containing positions and directions. In classical physics, physical space is often conceived in a three-linear dimension, okay? Third dimension. Modern physics usually consider it with time to be part of a boundless fourth-dimensional continuum known as space-time. Did y'all hear that? Known as space-time, okay? So we know that space is void of matter, and we know when it's void of matter, it's called ether. We understand that space is a three-dimensional, moving into fourth dimension under the same time continuum, okay? Where matter cannot exist. So what is matter? 3. Matter is a classical physics and general chemistry. It is any substance that has mass and takes up space by having volume, okay? So we know volume is based upon matter, and matter is based upon three-dimensional existence, because we know that three-dimension was created as a result of moving from zero dimension, two dimension, to three dimension, all right? On the same time continuum originated from space, okay? And we know space, as I said here, it's void of matter, okay? Space is void of matter, which created a vacuum. Let's go back here. In the late 19th century, physics postulated that ether permeated space, so meaning ether created that space, right? Which provided the medium which light could travel in a vacuum. And we know vacuum means vacant or void of space, right? And we know space, now void, is now consistent of what we call matter, which is called space and a three-dimensional continuum containing positions and directions. And the classical physics, physical space is often conceived in three-dimensional linear dimension. And we know that, as I said here, modern physics usually consider it with the time to be part of a boundless fourth-dimensional continuum known as space-time. 3. Matter is classical physics and generally chemistry is a substance that has mass and taken up space by having volume. 4. What is in modern physics? All right. And we're not talking about matter, all right, that exists within space, all right? Because we know that space would not exist if that space was not created by ether, all right, by way of vacuum. Because it says that ether created space through a vacuum in which light can travel through, okay? Which light can permeate. So it says 4. In modern physics, antimatter is defined as matter composed of antiparticles or partners of the corresponding particles in ordinary matter, okay? So the antiparticles are partners that you perceive as ordinary matter, okay? Which would we call that which takes up space, okay? And we know for all that space to be taken up, that space has to be created, which is based upon the vacuum created by ether, okay? And we know ether is called antimatter. Cool. In modern physics, antimatter is defined as a matter composed of antiparticles or partners of the corresponding particles that we all call ordinary matter and can be thought of as matter within reverse charge. the amount of energy released is usually proportional to the total mass of the collided matter and antimatter, in accordance with the notable mass energy equation E equals mc squared. E equals mc squared. The idea of a negative matter appears in the past theories of matter that has now been abandoned. Using the once popular vortex theory of gravity, the possibility of matter with negative gravity was discussed by William Hicks in 1880. Between the 1880s and the 1890s, Carl Pearson proposed the existence of squirts and sinks that flow of ether. 1 second, everyone. How about that, y'all? 5. We knew what space is, right? We know space was a result of special what we call space time. I mean gravitational collapse of a star. Okay, we know that when that star collapsed, it caused for the creation of antiparticles or particles corresponding to what we call ordinary matter. All right, we know in order for ordinary matter to exist, that space has to be created. We know that space was created by way of vacuum, which was caused by antimatter, which you call ether. Okay, which results in what they call E equal mc squared, antimatter constant, the speed of light. Okay, versus general theory of relativity, which deals with space time. Okay, so that's what we're going to discuss now. And 5, in physics, space-time is a mathematical model that fuses the three dimensions of space and the one dimension of time into a single four-dimensional continuum. Space-time diagrams are useful in visualizing and understanding relativistic effects such as how different observers perceive where and when events occur. So that's what we're doing here based off our understanding of what we call physics from dealing with from general theory of relativity or special theory of relativity, which deals with matter, understanding ourselves here in this form as matter, or understanding our true form as antimatter, as etheric entity. Okay? Once again, we must understand the difference between matter, which consists of our composition on this planet, as human beings, which was created by what we call the Eukaryo Genisis, versus our true self, which is created by what we call antimatter, which was created before the space to create what we call matter, which was called the etheric being. Okay? So we know that the physical being, which created from the Eukaryo Genisis, originated to what we call human being, which we are or presumed to be now. All right. This is why you must understand physics. You must understand physics. You must understand your makeup. Your makeup is from not from what you receive through transduction of your five senses, but through what we call the transduction through the energy, which gave the ability to interpret it through your five senses. Because we know that once again, transduction is the translation of that energy or message by way of what we call a stimuli into by way converted to what we call an electrical signal, which informs our physical self made of matter by way of what we call action potential. Okay. But once again, 5, in physics, space-time is a mathematical model that fuses the three-dimensional space and the one dimension of time into a single fourth-dimensional continuum. Space-time diagrams are useful in visualizing and understanding relativistic effects such as how different observers perceive where and when events occur. So everybody's perspective is different, okay? is different. All right, everybody teach differently. I'm telling you to interpret the teachings not from how we usually interpret it based on what we perceive with our five faculties, okay, which is a result in transduction from the false observation, okay, because that is interpreted from the physical eyes or what you hear or what you smell or what you touch. All right. That perception is an illusion because everything that was based upon that sensory neuron or that sensory receptor or that receptor cell, all that information has to go back to the brain for the brain to internalize it if it's true or not. And the brain ain't even got it in the eyes. It's in a box called your skull. Okay? So the brain has to make sense of all the information that you perceive based off your auditory, your visual, your hearing, and all the other faculties that were given to you to migrate and navigate to migrate or navigate on this planet that you call Earth. All right. So ether as an element. All right. The word ether in Homeric Greek means pure, fresh air or clear sky. We're not talking about that which came along with the creation of this planet, because we know that that was created by way of, as they said, the creation of that gene, procreative gene, prokaryotic gene, or cell. Okay, that gene was here before the creation of our planet. Okay, why? Because it said it was extraterrestrial. Okay, that genetic seed was extraterrestrial. All right, it gave birth to the eukaryotic cell. Okay, and we know the eukaryotic cell is a cell that gave birth to all life forms here on the planet, including plants. Okay, and those plants can only come forth by way of being planted on the Earth. On this planet we call Earth. All right, which is composed of water as well. Right. So since we have to look at this not from our physical makeup, but our etheric makeup as etheric beings, we know beings are made of antimatter, which you call ether, and ether promulgates by way of vacuum empty space for matter, which we see here on the physical plane, to come forth through what they call space time. All right, through space time, which is called space. All right. In space, a three-dimensional continuum containing positions and directions, and the cosmic physical space is often conceived in three linear dimensions. Modern physics usually consider it with time to be part of a balanced fourth-dimensional continuum known as space-time. That's the same thing we said here. We just defined in physics, space-time. Right here, space-time. Okay, same thing. Seeing things from a different angle. Okay, we're here in three-dimensional. Yeah. All right, call me when you get out of class. Everything okay? Yeah, it's fine. Okay. Bye. Okay, so we know space time, okay, deals with space that was created for us to exist here in this physical plane. All right. We know prior to that space created, it was created by us in our true estate as etheric being by way of what we call ether. Okay, because ether permeates space as well, but it's called antimatter. Okay, antimatter. All right. We know the vacuum causes was created for light and messages to travel through. Let's review it before we move forward. So according to medieval science, okay, medieval, all right, the science that was understood in medieval time. Our ancestors lived in the medieval time, so the science they knew back then, we should know now. Which is according to ancient and medieval science, alternative spellings include ether, aether, and ether, also known as the fifth element or quintessence. It's material that fills the region of the universe. That's extraterrestrial, okay? That's the extraterrestrial, okay? And they're not talking about a gene, a cell, bacteria, or archaea. They're talking about an entity, okay? They're talking about principle. They're talking about an essence, right, that fills the region of the universe beyond the terrestrial sphere. The concept of ether was used in several theories to explain several natural phenomena, such as the propagation of light and gravity. Light and gravity. So, as light beings with subject to gravity as a result of this mass body that we're consisted of, all right, which we call matter, contrast to the light body that we used to have called antimatter, a body of antimatter that was existing before the space that was created by way of what we call a vacuum. So it's in the 19th century, physics postulated that ether created space, providing a medium through which light could travel in a vacuum, okay, and be subject to gravity. So we are light beings subject to what we call general theory of relativity and not special theory of relativity, okay? A vacuum is void or vacant, all right? That's what vacuum means, all right? So antimatter, all right, was that which gave place to that voidness, okay? Antimatter gave way to that vacantness or that voidness, that space to put something in, which you call space, which is the three-dimensional continuum containing positions and directions, and classical physical space, and often conceived as three linear dimensions, which you call a third dimension, all right, which is called space-time. Three-dimensional to fourth dimension under the same time continuum, which is called quintessence, or what we call the fifth element. Y'all better stop playing with me. Matter, which we are composed of. Not antimatter, which is not matter, because antimatter was here before that space was created to create matter, which we're composed of now. Which it says here, matter is the classical physical, not etherical, made of energy, but physical, made of matter, and general chemistry. All right, it is the substance that has mass and not has mass and takes up space by having volume. Okay, it's also called anti-space time. Okay, matter is classical physics, general chemistry, with substance that has mass and takes up space by having volume. Volume. So we ain't gonna read 4 and 5 because we pretty much have an understanding what that means. Okay. Ether elements, we're gonna move forward with that. Let's read that again. All right. So it says the word in Homeric Greek means pure fresh air or clear sky. In Greek mythology, it was thought to be the pure essence that the gods breathe, filling the space where they live, analogous to the air breathed by mortals. So ether was the air that the gods breathed outside the terrestrial sphere, contrast to the air breathed by mortals. Okay? That's what this, I didn't write this, they wrote it. All right? They said it is also personified as a deity. So we were a deity breathing ether. Why? We were made of ether. Why? Because the body was made of ether, a body of energy. Okay? It don't need to breathe. You don't need no lungs and anything of that nature. Okay? Which is based upon uh, 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 the muscular and the what we call the cardiovascular system, uh, the uh, the endocrine system, and all the other systems that we revealed in this opening of this lecture or this platform. Okay, we understand that the ether as an element. We're talking about the element now. Okay, this is the element ether, not air, because air is what breathed by mortals. So they're not talking about that type of element. They're talking about ether, which exists outside of this planet. Because we know that air was created by is what you call oxygen, H2O. Okay, which is the element that was created by way of photosynthesis, which we discussed in the opening of this lecture as well, in regards to the creation of this planet Earth, as well as to all life beings living on this planet Earth. Okay, so in order for us to understand who we are as etheric beings, based off the understanding of ether, which was here before that space was created to put human beings in, as well as the air to create for human beings to breathe, we must understand that our true essence of where we come from goes back to understanding history. Okay, not by them who wrote our story, but us who wrote our story. As I always say, he who writes your book, set your timeline. Time never was when we were not. As the life of time begin, the time will come will be no more. So we know there was a time when human beings began, but there was no time when Ethereans began because they created the timeline. Okay, we created the timeline, which is those living on this planet, which has a limit. Okay, it is also personified as a deity. Either the son of Erebus, which is the myth story in Nyx and traditional Greek mythology, each is related to meaning to incinerate, okay? And transitive meaning to burn or to shine. Related to the name Ethiopians or Ethiopians, see Ethiopia, meaning people with burnt black facades, okay? So when we're talking about our existence here on this plane made of matter, okay, as a result of the space created by ether, our composition here by that space created by ether, based off the mental perception of those etheric beings, to create us as an expression of our true self, here identified by that burnt black facade, all right, which is what you call skin, okay? Skin, which is one of the manifestations that we just heard on this plane as human beings. All right. So in order for you to understand yourself as a human being, and as well as the true state that you existed in before you being a human being, if that's your true origin, you must understand the term called engram. Okay, engram. I didn't make the term up. The term was already here. An engram is a unit of cognitive information imprinted in a physical substance. All right. Theorized to be the means by which memories are stored as biophysical or biochemical changes in the brain or other biological tissue in response to the external stimuli. Okay, so we know external is outside the body and internal is inside the body. And we know when it comes to what we call neuron receptors or sensory neuron or receptor cells, there are only two types: external and internal. The external comes from within you, and the external comes from without you, outside of you. And everything that comes outside of you is based off what we perceive through our five senses, which is taste, touch, smell, and sight, which can only be interpreted by transduction. And we know transduction is the interpreting of that energy or that message by way of it being stimulated into a signal for the physical body to interpret it. And we know the body interprets it through engrams. Why? Because engram is a unit of cognitive information imprinted in the physical substance, theorized to be the means by which memories are stored as biophysical or biochemical changes in the brain or other biological tissue in response to the external stimuli. So mental uploading contrast to digital uploading is derivative. Why? Because it said engrams store memories, all right? Memories come from the past, i.e. space-time, past, present, and future. If you don't know in your present, your past, then you won't have a future because your present can only be remembered by those memories that came from the past on the space-time continuum, which is under the same time continuum, okay? So demonstrating the existence of and the exact mechanism and location of neurologically defined income has been a focus and persistent research for many decades. So if they've been researching this for many decades in regards to understanding the memories that are stored in biophysical and biochemical changes that are stored in the brain. You know, the brain works off the somatic nervous system, and the nervous system is based upon the sensory neuron or sensory reflected or reflected cells, which results in transition and transduction. And transduction, as we said, is the translation of energy, which is messages by way of the stimuli or stimulus, which we call oscillation, neural oscillation, or what we call brain waves. Let's go and review brain waves again. What teacher bringing it down to you like this? All right. Neural oscillation or brain waves are rhythmic or repetitive patterns of neural activity in the central nervous system. This is what those digital machines break up, or MRI. Okay. This is what they pick up. All right. But that's not the right frequency you're supposed to be using, because we know that everything that based upon transduction is a result of interpreting the message coming in from the messenger. And the messenger is not that people working in the hospital. The messenger is the sun. He sent the message. Okay. Yes, not the SON, but the SUN, because I'm the SON of the SUN. Okay. Which we all are SONs of the SUN. Okay. Neural tissue can generate oscillatory activity in many ways, driven either by mechanism within individual neurons or by interaction between neurons. Did you hear that? Did y'all hear that? In many ways, driven either by mechanism within individual neurons or by interaction between neurons. In individual neurons, oscillations can appear either as an oscillation in membrane potential or a rhythmic pattern of action potential. Did you hear that? Of action potential, which then produce oscillatory activation of post-somatic neurons. Let's go back to transduction. I don't just cut and paste something. I interpret what I read, and then cut and paste it. Now we already buy that, but let's go back to it. Transduction. This is called in physiology transduction, which is the translation of arriving stimulus into an active potential. It just said active potential by the sensory receptors, and it begins with stimulus changes the membrane potential of a receptor cell. A receptor cell converts the energy in a stimulus into an electrical signal, all right, which either come two forms, external and external, okay? So what we should be depending on now is not the external, which is your five senses, but the internal, which is your mental perception, all right, of yourself, all right, and that comes through engrams, all right, stored memory by way of you remembering yourself as an etheric being, okay, as an etheric being, okay. We must understand that. Oh, we moving. I repeat, an engram is a unit of cognitive information imprinted on the physical substance, derived to be the means by which memories are stored as biophysical or biochemical changes in the brain or other biological tissue in response to external stimuli, either external stimuli or internal stimuli. Why? Because when you have an internal stimuli, that's an inner thought, okay, versus an external thought, which is a thought based off your perception of your five senses. Okay, two different type of perception: what you perceive with your five senses and what you perceive by your memory or thinking process. All right, which is a cognitive skill, which is based off a sentient being on a conscious, what you call a conscious person without reason. Okay, Reasoning comes by way of interpreting, because you just don't believe anything that somebody tells you. You have to justify by reasoning, by testing it. Not only comes by translation of that information. All right. We understand engrams, or which are memories stored, are the way to be able to prove that which is being deciphered now. Okay, without the body even able to go there. Okay, through what we call autobiological memory. Okay, autobiological memory. Let's get to it. So we know that the only way we can grab or retrieve those memories stored in our physical self, we must understand autobiological memory. Okay, and it's a difference between the way that these memories can be retrieved. Okay, some of it can be done through dream states. All right, and some of it can be done through daydreaming. But the only problem between the daydreaming state and the sleeping state is that you have no control over the sleeping state, and most of it is are sporadic. You know what I'm saying? There's no concrete or uh, uh, tracing, because the images always change. All right, so there are multiple visions of your thought processes taking form as a result of your cognitive skills, but you have more control of your cognitive skills in your thought form when you use the process of what we call autobiological memory, which we're discussing now. Right. So it says, in order to understand ourselves by way of how we were created through engrams, which are the memory stored in our biological physical cell, all right, which we know was created through eukaryotes, which gave birth to everything on this planet that we call living entities, all right? And we know if it wasn't for the prokaryotes, which were considered extraterrestrial genetic material that gave life that not only exist outside the planet, but now exist on this planet, which are actually fossilized. And we know that the prokaryocytes are fossilized, as well as the eukaryocytes are fossilized, as evidence of the extraterrestrial evidence that existed outside the planet, which gave birth to that which exists in the planet based upon that space that was created through what we call ether. Okay? Because we know ether permeates space for which matter to exist, which created the what we call three-dimensional space, which you call space-time. Okay? Which you call space-time. Okay, so demonstrating the existence of and the exact mechanism and location of neurological defined engram has been a focus of persistent researchers for many decades, but none have been able to prove it till today. Through cell lineage, the developmental history of the tissue or organ from the fertilized age, okay? So whether the fertilized age is the state of undevelopment, okay? You didn't develop or mitosis. You didn't develop or what they call develop or what they call mutate into who you are now. It took a process of evolution based upon the genetic material put in that cell, which you call cell lineage. Okay, all right, which is the information impregnated or encoded in every egg of every entity that exists on this planet, whether it's animal, beast, bird, plant, whatever it is. Okay, so this is based upon the tracking of an organism's cellular ancestry due to the cell divisions and relocation as the time progresses. This starts with the originator cell and finishing with the mature cell that can no longer divide. That's very important. Why? Let's look at that. All right. We know Eukaryo Genesis was what? All right. We know what Eukaryo Genesis. Eukaryo Genesis is the beginning of the eukaryotes, which consists of all plant, animal life form on the planet Earth, which resulted from the bacteria or the archaea that are associated with what we call Asgard, and Asgard is associated with the prokaryotes a cell, which gave allow for us as human beings to exist on this planet, because the prokaryote cell is an extraterrestrial cell, all right, which originated by what we call astrobiology, which is the study of the stars. Okay, so we know eukaryogenesis origin goes back to what we call a ground group. Okay, it says eukaryogenesis, diversification, and crown eukaryotes. You hear that? Do y'all see that? No, you don't. So let me show. Eukaryogenesis, right? We're talking about eukaryogenesis, diversification, all right? Crown eukaryotes. In turn, the laker gave rise to the eukaryotes crown group, containing the ancestors of animals, fungi, plants, and a diverse range of single-cell organisms, okay? With the new capabilities and complexities of the eukaryotic cell. Single cells without cell walls are fragile and have a low probability of being fossilized. You hear that? If fossilized, they have few features to distinguish them clearly from prokaryotes: size, morphology, complexity, and eventually multicellularity. Early eukaryotes fossils from the late Paleoproterozoic include archaeotarch parts of microfossils with relatively robust ordinates, carbonaceous vesicles, and tapiania from 1.63 uh, uh, GYA. That just would amount a certain amount of years. Okay, that's what that means. All right. So what is crown? What is the crown group associated with the Eukaryo Genesis? What is the crown group? Let's see. In paleogenetics, the crown group or crown assemblage is a collection of species composed of the living representatives of the collection. Did y'all hear that? Of the collection. The most recent common ancestor of the collection and all descendants of the most recent common ancestor is thus a way of defining a class, a group consistent of species and all its extinct, extent, or extinct descendants. For example, near these birds can be defined as a crown group, which includes the most recent common ancestor of all modern birds and all of its extent or extinct descendants. Okay, so a representative, you hear that? A representative in regards to the eukaryotic genesis, in regards to the foundation of how all life became how life manifests on this planet. Okay, so we know that just with Eukaryogenesis, all right? And the crown group are the one who sits as representatives of that group in regards to what we call the representative, all right? All right. So the only way we can retrieve the information that's stored in the memories, that's stored within our biophysical, biochemical self, is through what we call astral projection, okay? Is through astral projection. Once again, because we can't take the body in to the information because we know we're human beings now. We went from a egg to who we are now. Okay, so through cell lineage development. Okay, Through cell lineage, the development history of the tissue or organ from the fertilized egg. This is based on the tracking of the organism's cellular ancestry due to the cell division and relocation as time progresses. This starts with the originator cell and finishing with the mature cell that can no longer divide. That's called the crown group. Okay? The crown group. You've seen it for yourself. Let's continue. Astral projection is a paranormal interpretation of the outer body experience that assumes the existence of one or more non-physical planes of existence in an associated body beyond the physical. Commonly, such planes are called astral, etheric, or spiritual body. Okay, so you must understand your etheric body and the connection it has to the physical body through what we call this, the silver line. Okay, the astral line that connects both bodies. Okay, this is the astral projection. It's a often experienced as the spirit or astral body leaving the physical body to travel in the spirit world on the astral plane. This is through what we call outer body experience. Okay, outer body experience to what we call um, um, uh, autobiological memory. Okay, autobiological memory. Because we know engrams are stored memories. So in order to retrieve those stored memories, you must understand autobiological memory. All right. Engrams are stored memories, so you must understand autobiological memory. An engram is a unit of cognitive information printed in a physical substance derived to be the means by which memories, y'all, all right, are stored as biophysical or biochemical changes in the brain or other biological tissue in response to external stimuli. We know that's a form of what we call transduction, all right? Interpreting the energy or the message by way of stimuli, which create electrical signal for you to evaluate here on this plane. Demonstrating the existence of and the stack mechanism and location of the neurologically defined engram has been a focal point for persistent research for many decades. And why? Because they don't understand cell lineage. Cell lineage is the development of the history of the tissue organ from the fertilized egg. You got to understand yourself going all the way back before the egg. This is based upon tracing an organism cellular ancestry due to the cell division and relocation as time progresses. So we ain't where we was when we first started off. All right, we ain't where we was when we first began. All right, our beginning was when God said. All right, so that goes back to the beginning of the genetic material that was impregnated here on planet Earth. That's the prokaryote. Okay, if I'm pronouncing it right. All right, versus the karyote, which started the ability for us to um, uh, mutate or create what they call mitosis here on the planet Earth to unicellular or multicellular. Okay, so the only way to understand the memories or to retrieve the memories, which were caused by what we call engrams, starting our biophysical cell, okay, is to what we call astral projection to what we call autobiological memory, because autobiological memory allows you to retrieve the memory that was stored by what we call engram, because we know that immortality is acquired by mental uploading. Okay? Yes, immortality is achieved by mental uploading. So by remembering by way of astral projection, the engrams of the information is stored are done by what we call mental uploading by way of interpreting the messages or the energy through the electrical signals, which were caused by the energy that was interpreted by the physical body through its five faculties, all right, which is the result of what we call transduction, okay? Transduction. But we ain't using the physical body and resulting by transduction based upon our five faculties. We're revealing this matter based upon our astral body, which is based upon our etheric body, okay? Which can only be done by what we call astral projection, all right? Looking beyond the physical, understand beyond the physical so that the comprehension of that which is beyond the physical can now come into full fruition. which you can qualify here on this plane once you come back into this form that you're in, all as a result of what we call outer body experience. Okay, outer body experience through astral projection, not by way of sleeping, but by way of daydreaming. Okay, you know when you're sitting in your room or sitting on the bus or sitting in the park when you ain't thinking about nothing. Most of your daydreaming, because you ain't sleeping, is based upon your five faculties, which is taste, touch, smell, sight. And usually those interpretations are wrong because it's based upon your enjoyment of things. All right. Because you won't be thinking about something that's going to harm you. All right. Out of mind, out of sight. So if you think about something going to harm you or you think about harming somebody, then that's a projection of your mental state manifesting on your and your external existence versus because it's originated in your external and manifested in the external manifestation through that electrical signal that originated from the stimuli. Because whatever caused you to punch that person in that face came from a stimulation. It stimulated you, right? Something grew up in you, like, you know, why did I do that? All right. It's called what they call it instant reaction, impulse. Yeah, an impulse. All right, a brainwave, or neural oscillation. Okay, we already defined that. For astral projection is the primary interpretation of an out of body experiences, not a physical body experiences, because you can understand that from your five faculties. But in order we can understand or interpret our outside body experience through transduction, that assumes the existence of one or more non-physical planes of existence and associated with the body beyond the physical. Cognitive planes are called astral, etheric, or spiritual body, all right? Which you call the etheric self, so the ether body or the mental body, okay? Astral projection is often experienced at the spirit or astral body, leaving the physical body to travel in the spirit world or astral plane. Early collection of OBE, i.e., out-of-body experience cases, has been made by Ernesto Bolzano of Italy and Robert Krukal of UK. Krukal approaches the subject from a spiritualistic position and collected his case predominantly from spiritualistic newspapers such as the Psychic News, which appeared to have biased his result in various ways. For example, the majority of his subjects reported seeing a silver cord connected with the physical body and his observing counterpart, whereas Green, see below, found that less than 4% of her subjects noticed anything of this sort, and some 80% reported feeling that they were a disembodied consciousness with no external body at all. The silver cord is a metaphysical study in literature, also known as Suchwatma, or life thread, or of the Antakarana, refers to a life-giving linkage from the highest of Atma down to the physical body. It also refers to an extent synthesis of this thread, and a second, the conscious thread, passing from the soul to the physical body that connects the physical body to the etheric body, onward to the astral body, and finally to the mental body. Okay? Now, why do I say that? Because we understand that in order to attain your astral body or etheric body is based upon understanding what that etheric body or mental body is, or etheric body is, and that's through what they call those engrams that were stored through your biophysical or biochemical self, which is not your physical self. We know physical is based upon the biochemical, and the biochemical is based off genetics, all right? And so we see autobiographical memory. This is why it's called AM, okay? Because when you sleep, you don't sleep in AM. You sleep in PM, okay? So autobiological memory goes into what we call AM, because that's when you deal with daydreaming. Greetings. He who is. Thank you. Autobiographical knowledge base contains knowledge of the self, used to provide information on what the self is, what the self was, and what the self can be. This information is categorized into three broad areas: lifetime period, general events, and event-specific knowledge. Okay? Once to begin, the autobiographical knowledge base contains knowledge of the self, used to provide information on what the self is, what the self was and what the self can be. So when we think about the self, we think about the human body. Okay? When we think about the human body, the self is based upon the presumption of self, which is based upon the five faculties, which is taste, touch, smell, sight, which all results in what we call transduction. And what the transduction is the interpretation of the energy or messages as the result, which is converted to what we call a stimuli, which manifests by what we call electrical signal. Okay? So everything that is based upon electrical signal is based upon your five senses. And the majority of those five senses we use, the first one we use is what we see with the eye. Okay? All right. The next one is what we see with the here with the ear. Okay. And if that don't work, then it's based upon what we feel. Okay. Those are the main three ways of transduction that we use based upon our existence here on the physical plane. But there's a way that we can interpret it ourselves on the astral plane as a result of understanding who we were on the astral plane based upon our genetic material that originated from what we call the Eukaryo yolk, which originated as an interstellar genetic material that impregnated or encoded itself on planet Earth that existed 4 billion years ago. And the evidence that we have to prove that is a fossilized. Okay, we have fossilized. Okay, so let me give you an example of autobiographical memory and the importance of autobiological memory in regards to those engrams to remember your true self, what the self is, what the self could be, and where the self comes from. Okay? All right. So now I'm gonna give you examples, which are the wrong examples, because these are the examples that they created for. All right. What example? Lifetime periods are composed of general knowledge about distinguishable and a themed time in an individual life. For example, the period spent at school, right? Or entering into the workforce, all right, or the work theme, or lifetime periods having a distinct beginning and ending, but they are often fuzzy and overlap. Lifetime periods contain thematic knowledge about the features of that period, such as the activities, relationship, and locations involved, as well as typical knowledge about the duration of the period. So that goes back to what we call space time. Okay, when space time is based upon space, the time that you existed when you became a being of material, which we call matter. Okay, and even though you was composed of matter, it makes no sense to be made of matter without being conscious of that matter. And that came by way of you knowing you were made of matter. That's resulted by way of transduction. Transduction is the interpretation of that energy or message by way of stimuli that results by electrical signal that you interpreted with the physical body through its five senses: taste, touch, smell, sight, which still has to be interpreted by the somatic system, which is a nervous system, which is based upon neuron receptors or sensory neuron, or what you call receptor cells, which is based upon what the brain final what the brain final decision is based on what your perception is here on what you see with your physical eyes, because the mental perception is totally different from the physical perception because you're here on Earth, all right, and that time is limited. Okay, that time is limited. So if that's all you subject to and that's all you know, then that means there's a world of information that you don't know of in regards to your true self, right? Because that true self of who you were prior to you becoming in on the plane of manifestation was stored by way of what we call engrams in your biophysical self and your biochemical self before your biophysical self came to existence. So the only way you can obtain the information that supersedes the biophysical self is the biochemical and which is the biology of yourself that goes through your self-being system and before this earth, which is called the study of astrobiology. Okay, and you can't study astrobiology if you didn't come from astrobiology. All right, you don't see a dog or cat or animal or plant understand astrobiology or yet alone teaching astrobiology. But yet it's in the makeup because that's their composition. You are a result of what your genetics says you are. All right. You cannot change that. All right. So let's get into this. All right. So we know that uh, uh, although we know that what we say, we know that an out of body experience, i.e., called OBE, all right, an out of body experience can be achieved by what we call daydreaming, all right, which is called autobiological memory, which stands for AM, all right? Autobiological memory states for AM versus the dream state, which is known for PM, okay? PM, all right? So out of body experience, or OBE, or sometimes UBI, is a phenomenon in which a person perceives the world from the location outside of their physical body. Daydreaming is a stream of consciousness that detaches from current external tasks when attention drifts to a more personal and internal direction. It didn't say internal direction, but an internal direction. An external and internal direction is two different things. The external direction is a direction outside of yourself, whereas an internal direction is a direction that comes from inside yourself. That meaning that you either be led from your outside senses or you can be led from your inside senses. And a sense is an impulse, and an impulse is a stimuli which results in an electrical signal, which result of the interpretation, which is called transduction of that message, which we call energy and motion. Okay? And energy can not be destroyed. It just changes form. Okay? Yeah, I'm back. All right? So if you're an Ethereum, then that means that, and if you copy what I'm saying, that means that what you're breathing right now is the cosmic breath. All right? Versus that breath that mortal breathe, that mortal beings breathe, that human being breathe. Yeah, we're here, but that's not our true essence. That's not what we originated. We are cosmic beings, right? Because we understand cosmology, and cosmology is astrobiology, and astrobiology that deals with things that are outside of this planet, okay? Which are procurial, all right? So we know daydreaming, which is called all out of body experience, uh, 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 is a result of something that you do in the morning where you just sitting there thinking about something versus you dreaming. Okay. So dreaming does not involve thinking. Okay. Dreaming does not involve thinking, but daydreaming does. I know it, Noble. Thank you. All right. So we know in order for you to do engrams to retrieve the memories that are stored in your biophysical or biochemical cells, and not your biophysical, biochemical and biophysical cells, we must understand the makeup of our physical cells and the chemical cell that goes back into the genetic material that we're made of, which is the genes that were in you prior to you even coming to being, and it's what we call space-time, which is a three-dimensional world. Okay, moving to the fourth dimensional world, which is the return back home by way of you understanding through the cosmic breath, all right, and not the physical breath, because the cosmic breath can only be achieved by what we call out of body experience through what we call engrams. Out of body experience results in the memory of that which existed in your cells that you forgot, because you're not seeing yourself from a cellular level, okay? You're seeing yourself from a level that consists of what we call matter, okay? And we know matter takes up space. We know space was created by ether by way of what we call vacuum that is void of space, okay? So as we can see, out of body experience allows you to breathe that conscious breath through what we call uh, 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 autobiological memory, okay? Autobiological memory, all right? Memory of who you were, okay? Your noble family, Ethelyn, also spelled Atheling or Ethelyn, was an Old English term used in Anglo-Saxon England to designate princes of royal dynasties who were eligible for the kingship. The term is the Old English and Old Saxon compound of Ethely or Ethel, all right, meaning noble family, and in meaning belonging to. It was usually rendered in Latin as Phileas Regius, king's son, okay? Or the Anglo-Latin neologism, Clito, right? The S prefix, the S prefix is a qualifier for ethyl, and ethyl alcohol originally came from the name ethyl, assigned in 1834 by Justus Liebig. He coined the word from the German name ether, of the commonly called ether in English, more specifically called diethyl ether. According to Oxford English Dictionary, ethyl is a contraction of the ancient Greek ether, upper air, and the Greek word his, wood, raw material, his, matter, or substance. Okay, so as we can see, ethyl is the same word as ether, is also the same word as ethanol. Okay, same word. We know ethanol is what we call alcohol. Okay, ethanol is called alcohol, but we know when you're dealing with ethyl, ethyl from an elemental uh, 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 interpretation goes back to ether. Okay, ether goes back to ether. We know as there being, we supersede those elements that exist here on the planet that governs this terrestrial sphere. All right, which is the spirit dealing with Earth versus the spirit that was created as a result of the creation of the universe through what we call a gravitational collapse, which we call a black hole. Okay, a black hole or wormhole. All right, so let's look at it. Ethno evolution. The average human digestive system produces approximately 3 gallons of ethanol per day through fermentation of its content. Catabolic degradation of ethanol is thus essential to life, not only of humans, but of all known organisms. Certain amino acid sequences in the enzyme used to oxidize ethanol are conserved unchanged, going back to at least the common ancestors over 3.5 billion years. Such a function is necessary because all organisms produce alcohol in a small amount by several pathways, primarily through fatty acid synthesis, glycosylipid metabolism, and bile acid biosynthesis pathways. If the body has no mechanism for catabolizing the alcohol, they will build up and the body becomes toxic. Okay? The body becomes toxic. According to classical Jewish sources, the Hebrew year 6000 marks the latest time for the initiation of the Messiah age. The Talmud, the Midrash, and the Zohar state that the date in which the Messiah will appear is 6,000 years from creation. We know when God created heaven and earth, as we went in Genesis, he was talking about the creation of the genetic involvement that gave birth to everything that we see, what we call life. Okay, from our perception of perceiving life. But the perception of life existed before our perception, because we know that life, as we see on planet Earth, was created from what we call eukaryocytes. All right, we know eukaryocytes gave base to what we call mitochondrial DNA, which is the genetic material for everything on this planet, including plants, animals, beasts, folk, fowl, etc. Okay, we know that it got its start from an extraterrestrial uh, uh, um, genetic material called prokaryote, okay? And prokaryotes evolved 4 billion years ago, and it's considered something that came just outside the planet. So it's called an extraterrestrial, but yet the evidence is fossilized here in North America, okay? So we must understand that in order for us to understand ourselves as a result of the prokaryote, which originated from what we call the study of autobiology, and autobiology is the study of the stars. And we know this planet was created from a collapsed star called gravitational collapse. Okay, so if that's the case, then we must understand what the Bible is telling us. All right, in Genesis, that we should understand now, because that was required in the Talmud, the Midrash, and the Zohar. That's why I underlined. It says that the date by which the Messiah will appear is 6,000 years from creation, which is 5781, which is the year 2024. Creation started in 37 parts of 5784, which is the year 2024 in the Gregorian year, but in the birth year, it's 2974. We know your creation story started in 3761, which in the birth year 1 BC. Okay, so we know that everything that God told you in Genesis 1 verses 1 to 31 in regards to his creation is nothing more than a story fabricated when the actual story is about the Eukaryo Genesis, with creation of the first cell that gave birth to life on this planet Earth. Okay? So for all those who claim to be children of God, then you must understand what the Talmud, the Midrash, and the Zohar was trying to say. So in order for you to understand that, let's see what they were saying. One, the Talmud was a centerpiece of all cultural life and was a foundation to all Jewish thought and aspiration, serving also as a guide for the daily life. Okay, so the Talmud was the instructional manual for the daily life of all Jews, which were the information that they hid from you and created it and hid it from you as a result of perceiving that they're telling you that we're human beings because they created your Bible. All right, the Jews are your Scottish Jews, which are the ones who descended from the Jewish diaspora, and we know that from the Jewish diaspora to the Scots Enlightenment resulted in what we call the plantation of Ulster, which was started by King James, the one who wrote the Bible, which mentions the Talmud, Midrash, and Zohar. All right, so we see the Talmud was a guide for daily life. The Midrash, which means resort to, seek with care, inquire, or require. So we know that with the interpretation, okay? The breakdown, the understanding of what is supposed to be something that guides you daily, okay? So we just define the Talmud, which is something that you're supposed to do every day, all right? Which is based upon the Midrash, which was the resort to seek with care, to inquire or require. So you're supposed to be trying to understand, interpret every day what the Talmud and the Midrash was wanting you to study, and that's the Zohar. All right. What is Zohar? Zohar means spindle or radiance. It is the foundation work of the Kabbalistic literature. It is a group of books including commentaries on the mystical aspects of the Torah, the 5 books of Moses, the scriptural interpretations, as well as the material of mysticism, mystical cosmology, and mystical psychology. Zohar contains discussions of the nature of God, all right, Genesis 1, the origin and structure of the universe, Genesis 1, the nature of the souls, redemption, and relationship of the ego to darkness and the true self to the light of God. That's First Genesis chapter 1, verse 1 through 31. Okay? All right. This a Masonic code, all right, which the Jews created, was incorporated in Alfred's Doomsday Book. Okay? Alfred's Doomsday Book in regards to cosmology or the understanding of astrobiology. Okay, we know astrobiology is the study of the stars. We know the stars is what birth this planet and this universe. All right, starting with the first progenitor, the prokaryotic cell. Okay, which according to fossilized records kept here goes back 4 billion years ago. All right, as evidence on Earth. So we see the Doomsday Book or Doom Book Code of Alfred, the legal code of Alfred the Great, was the code of law, Doom being a law of judgment compiled by Alfred the Great in 893 AD, honest Dominion, and the year of our Lord. God was the Lord. Alfred codified 3 prior action codes, those of Edward of Kent, and the of Wessex, and Ophir of Mercia. All right, we know America is where the word America gets its name from Mercia. All right. We know it can either come from 2 places: America Vespucius, all right, or Mercia, which is goes back to kingdom that existed before the kings of West. Okay. Because if you take the A, you get America with an R. Okay. So, and there's some context to prove that as well. All right. So it says here. One second. You're welcome. All right. This is the book for our temple. Okay. This is what we have to inform us of where we come from, who we are, and where we're going. Okay. It was already written. I didn't come to change anything. I come to fulfill it. Right. The title Doom book, Old English Doombok, comes from the Old English word doom, meaning judgment. It sounds like resurrection or law, as an alpha's admonition to doom very evilly. Do not doom one doom to doom to the rich, another to the poor. No, doom one doom to your friend, another to your foe. This reflects Mosaic law, which says you should do no injustice in judgment. You should not be partial to the poor nor defer the great, but you are to judge your neighbor fairly. The Christian theologian F.N. Lee, extensive document of Alfred the Great work of collecting the law code from the three Christian Saxon kingdoms and compiling them into his Doom book. Lee details how Alfred incorporated the principles of the Mosaic law into his code and how the code of Alfred became the foundation for the common law. In 1154, Henry II became the first Plantagenet king. Among many achievements, Henry institutionalized the common law by creating a unified system of law to the country through incorporating and elevating local customs to the national, ending local control and peculiarities, eliminating arbitrary remedies, and reinstating the jury system, sent citizens sworn on oath to investigate reliable criminal accusations and civil claims. The jury reached its verdict through evaluating common local knowledge, not necessarily through the presentation of evidence, a distinguishable factor from today's civil and criminal court. Originated of the common law, New Jersey court, being one of the 13 original colonies. All right. Before we read that, let's go here and close. As we can see here, dealing with what we call what is it? Let's go back to my article, our pamphlet. As the proof, here's the proof. All right. We know that in closing, I know the brother just came on, so I want to just qualify this real quick. All those who are confused about what I'm bringing to you, right? Let me just kind of close it. Earth, all right? But we know that we were here before this earth was created, all right? How can we prove it, all right? Earth, archaeobacteria. Earth, Earth is the third planet from the sun and the only astronomical object known to harbor life, human life. This is enabled by Earth being in an ocean world, the only one in the solar system sustaining liquid surface water. Now, I elaborated early on in the lecture, so I'm not going to do that now. Earth has a dynamic atmosphere which sustains Earth's surface conditions and protects it from most meteorite and UV light at entry, i.e., radiation, as the composition of primarily nitrogen and oxygen. Water vapor is widely present in the atmosphere, forming clouds that cover most of the planet. Water vapors act as a greenhouse gas and together with other greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, particularly carbon dioxide, which creates the condition for both liquid surfaces, water and water vapor, to persist via the captive energy from the sun's light. The oldest material found in the solar system is dated to be, you can look at the date here, billion years ago. Let's read it anyhow. The oldest material found in the solar system is dated to be 4.5682 plus 0.004 GA billion years ago. By 4.54 plus 0.04 GA, the primordial Earth had formed, right? The bodies in the solar system formed and evolved with the sun. In theory, a solar nebula partitioned a volume out of the molecular cloud by gravitational collapse. That's what we call a black hole, which began to spin and fly into a circumstellar disk, and then the planet grew out of that disk with the sun. All right, let's just qualify this again: gravitational collapse. Right, gravitational collapse is the contraction of an astronomical object due to the influence of its own gravity. This is called space-time. Okay, space-time. All right. We know space-time is dealing with moving from a three dimension to a fourth dimension under the same time continuum. Okay, that's what you call space-time. General theory of relativity contrast or contrast what we call special theory of relativity. Gravitational collapse is a contraction of the astronomical object due to the influence of its own gravity. When you throw a Coca-Cola can up in the air, if it's filled, it's going to come down quicker than you do with an empty can. All right. So it's based upon mass, okay, which you call matter, okay, which is based upon space being filled by what we call volume. All right. Right. We know parts of that space being created based upon volume, it was void. All right. Because that voidness had to be there for that space to be created, and that's called, or by way of what we call a vacuum, which is created by what we call antimatter. We know antimatter permeates a vacuum that causes light to travel through, which creates space for matter to manifest, which we call from 0 dimension, 2 dimensions, 3 dimensional, which is called space-time, subject to the general theory of relativity. Gravitational collapse is the contraction of the astronomical object due to the influence of its own gravity. We're talking about the sun. Okay? We're talking about a gravitational collapse, a supernova, all right, or a black hole, which tends to draw matter inward towards the center of gravity. Gravitational collapse is a fundamental mechanism for structure formation in the universe. Over time, an initial relatively smooth distribution of matter, matter is that which fills space, that gives volume. After sufficient accretion, may collapse to form pockets of higher density, such as stars or black holes. Okay, we know that results in what they call a white dwarf. Okay, a white dwarf. Let's move forward. Let's go back to the book. Now we're dealing with the origin of early life formed in the history of life, right? Chemical reactions. Chemical reactions led to the first cell replicating molecule. Talking about genetics, Genesis. God said, let there, God said, in Genesis 1, God said, let us create, it said, in the beginning, God created heaven and earth, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the deep. They're talking about the genetic material that's inside what we call the element called H2O, which is water. All right. We know that was created, as we said, as we're going to read now. Origin of life, early known life forms, the history of life. Chemical reactions led to the first self-replicating molecule. That's called eukaryocyte, contrast or versus eukaryocytes. Eukaryotes versus eukaryotes. Chemical reactions led to the first self-replicating molecules about 4 billion years ago. A half billion years later, the last common essence of all carrying life arose. The evolution of photosynthesis allows the sun's energy to harvest directly by life form. The resultant molecular oxygen, O2, accumulated in the atmosphere and due to the interaction with ultraviolet solar radiation, form a protective ozone layer, O3, in the upper atmosphere. Okay? The oldest known fossilized prokaryotes were laid down approximately 3.5 billion years ago. only about 1 billion years after the formation of the Earth's crust. All right? That's why I said prokaryotes are extraterrestrial cells. They were here before the planet, and they can be found on the planet because they're fossilized. Okay? The oldest known fossilized prokaryotes were laid down approximately 3.5 billion years ago, only about 1 billion years after the formation of Earth's crust. All right? Eukaryotes only appears in fossil records later. Okay, so the eukaryotes came later, which how life exists on the Earth because they originated from the eukaryotes, which creates the multicellular or the unicellular genetic material, which you call mitochondria DNA. Okay, eukaryotes only appear in the fossil record later and may have formed from endosymbiosis of multiple karyotes ancestors. The oldest known fossil eukaryotes are about 1.7 billion years old. However, some genetic evidence suggests the eukaryotes appear as early as 3 billion years ago. Okay? While Earth is the only place in the universe where life is known to exist, the only place in the universe where life is known to exist, some have suggested that there is evidence on Mars of fossils of living prokaryotes. Prokaryotes, all right? Let's go here. Prokaryotes occur on Asgard, which consists of archaea and bacteria. Okay, and we know the eukaryotes originated from that, which allow life to exist on this planet. Okay, so these are the places that prokaryotes were found. Okay, to exist. Okay, there's your map here. Let's lighten up the map. Okay, as you can see, they're found in North America. All right, not in Africa. All right, we know human beings originated from the eukaryocytes. All right, we know the eukaryocytes and prokaryocytes, which created the eukaryocytes, is predominantly here in North America, but yet they want to associate human beings and the evolution of human beings with North Africa. All right, and out of Africa, they're saying all life originated in Africa. Well, let's prove that wrong. Okay, based upon fossilized records of prokaryocytes and your prokaryotes and the eukaryotes, all right, which were fossilized evidence that we see here are found here in North America, all right, and sporadic over here in what we call the continents of Europe, Africa, and Asia, okay? We see it here. So if that's the case, then let's find out where the genetic material that we as a dirt being now called human being originated from, all right? And who were the original people here? Because when you go back into the history dealing with the Anglo-Saxons, they were born with their plan with the Carolingian Merovingian dynasties, who were Frankish kings, okay, who never claimed to be descendants of God, the God who created the story as told in Genesis, okay? All right, because the Frankish don't understand genetics. Okay, they're originated from what we call the Stone Age. Okay, or the man that ever evolved from the Stone Age. All right, known as the Clovis culture. Okay, let's get there. Before we get to read this one last article. All right, that's why this pamphlet is called Kira, Eukaryo Genesis, all right? Eukaryo Genesis, all right? Not the book of Genesis, but the Eukaryo Genesis, because the Bible is not a book about God creating physical things. It's God speaking about physical things and their unfoldment or their evolution based off the genetic material that was impregnated on this planet 4.5 billion years ago, okay? So 6, Eukaryogenesis, the process which created the eukaryotic cell, and lineage, meaning everything that consider our life form, is a milestone in the evolution of life, since eukaryotes included all complex cells and almost all multicellular organisms. That's not talking about prokaryotes, but the eukaryotes. Life arose on Earth once it had cooled enough for oceans to form. The last universal common ancestor, Luca, was an organism which had ribosomes and the genetic code, and it lived some 4.4 billion years ago. Okay, it gave rise to two main branches of prokaryotic life: the bacteria, and the archaea. From among these small cell rapidly dividing ancestors arose the eukaryotes, which much larger cell nucleate and distinctive biochemistry. The eukaryotes form a domain that contains all complex cells and most types of multicellular organisms, including animals, plants, and fungi. All right, so it says it mentioned biochemistry. So we know engrams are the memories stored in what they call biophysical or biochemistry makeup, which goes back into the genes. Okay, go back to the gene. In order for you to understand that, you must understand astrobiology, because it wasn't for the prokaryote, which was created from astrobiology, because it's considered an extraterrestrial. Let's prove it. Page 1, in closing. And we question the topic concerning gods, angels, extraterrestrial life, aliens, life, or colloquially simply aliens, is life which does not originate from the planet, from Earth. Okay, no extraterrestrial life has yet been conclusively detected. Such life might range from simple forms of such prokaryotes to intelligent beings, which are created by eukaryotes. Prokaryotes and eukaryotes. We know eukaryotes was the descendant of prokaryotes, which set the standard for things to evolve and be created here on planet Earth. Because we know that prokaryotes are considered extraterrestrial life. Okay, because it said prokaryotes to intelligent beings. So it was the prokaryotes that created us as intelligent beings, but we became docile as a result of forgetting information, which is result in what we call the loss of the memories, which was stored by way of engram into our biochemical or biophysical self. Okay, possibly bringing forth civilizations that might be far more advanced than the human species. All right, so we must understand how important it is to retrace our steps as what we call etheric, okay, ether beings, all right, because our genetics originated from the stars through the study of astrobiology, okay, astrobiology. As I come to my closing, yeah, etheric body transduction, all right, what is transduction? Ducing in simplest terms. Definitely transducing, transitive verb, to convert something such as energy or message. Transduction is the translation of energy or message into a stimuli, from a stimuli into an electrical signal. Okay? So it says transduction is to convert something such as energy or a message. So that means energy and message is the same thing into another form, essentially sense organ, i.e., what we call a neural, what we call a sensory receptor or receptor cell or a neuron or a sensory neuron. All right, this is what results by way of the electrical signal that's created from a stimuli by way of the energy or message that you're trying to interpret by way of transduction. Okay, so transduction means to convert something such as energy or message into another form, essentially sense organs transduce physical energy into the nervous signal. Okay, 2, to cause genetic material to undergo transduction. So transduction is the interpretation of that energy or message into what they call into a stimuli, which creates what they call a signal. All right, and the only way that can be done is by understanding your true form, which is your etheric body. Etheric body transduction. We know transduction is the interpretation. So you must interpret your etheric body of what that etheric body consists of. The etheric body or ether body is the subtle body propounded in esoteric philosophy as the first or lowest layer of the human energy field or aura. The etheric body is said to be in immediate contact with the higher physical body and to sustain it and connect it with the higher body. It is also said to consist of a finer substance, more pure and composed of smaller particles than the ordinary matter of physical plane. So that means that if antimatter, i.e., the etheric body, is different from the human body, i.e., the physical body, then you got a lot of learning to do. Okay? A lot to learning to do, but that's what Genesis is all about. Eukaryo Genesis. All right? The cell of Genesis, because we know the word Genesis means gene, genetics. Okay? Genes means genetics. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So that means that you got the prokaryotes and the eukaryotes. Okay? These were the two predecessors for us as under what we call the process of evolution, because everything was started by those two. Okay? Everything was started by those two, the prokaryotes and the eukaryotes. How we know? Because Genesis starts with genetics, okay? God's message, okay? Not speaking from a human, because God was no human. God was not in the human form. If there was any form that God was in, it was in the etheric form, because we know the etheric permeates space, all right, by way of a vacuum that's void of space, and which space can be used based upon matter, which is uh, 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 something that creates value, okay, or math. All right. So once again, Genesis is a book of biology, okay, a book of biology. You must understand that. If you don't, you will not be able to make the transition, right? Okay. All right. One more thing. All right. So that's over. Let's talk about something else real quick. In closing, I hold that thought. Jefferson versus United States Federal Government, ETF, ETAL. Jefferson versus United States Federal Government, ETL. Plaintiff, King Clifford Jefferson. Defendant, United States Federal Government, United States Federal Reserve System, United States Department of Treasury, and officers, agents, and employees. Okay? Case doc. Complaint filed July 23rd, 21st, 2023. Okay? So I don't think nobody from any religious society or any political society or any society for that matter has filed a complaint against the government, the Federal Reserve Bank, as well as the Department of Treasury in regard to Article 1, the gold standard. Okay? No one has done that but me. Okay? And as a result of that, look what happened. Hold on, before I don't want to read that. Let me close on that. Let's go ahead. Okay, so we understand the difference between the original beings, i.e., the etheric beings or the Etherians, all right, who were here before the creation of this earth and then created offspring on this earth, all right, which is supposed to remember themselves, all right, versus those who evolved on here that does not have an offspring that originated from the stars, governing under the laws dealing with astrology or the study of the stars. So why is this important? We know that the Anglo-Saxons are considered the angels or angels, which means messenger. All right, because we know we're messengers because this is the information we're revealing to all those who don't know this information based upon the message that we received that's encoded in our DNA. All right, and we're saying that our answers were the offspring of those who were genetic material was impregnated in the planet. Okay, through what we call the eukaryotes versus the impregnator, which was the eukaryotes. Okay, so let's go back to the Clovis culture. And we know that the eukaryotes and the eukaryotes predominantly the genetic material that goes back 4 billion years ago was found here in what we call North America versus that being found over in what we call Africa. All right, we see that it did not start in Africa. All right, life did not start in Africa. Let's go back to the proof. We just got a lot of newcomers. So. A prokaryote, less commonly specialized prokaryote. Now remember, this is the extraterrestrial gene. All right, it was found 4.4 billion years ago on the planet Earth, but this is the extraterrestrial gene or cell that doesn't have a nucleus. All right, so it's not a unicellular nor multicellular cellular cell. Okay, but yet it has information within that cell to pass on to the unicellular or multicellular, the membranes, which has the nucleus, called the eukaryote or the eukaryotes. All right. So a prokaryote, less commonly spelled prokaryotes, is a single cell organism whose cell lacks a nucleus and other membrane bound organelles, meaning that it's not able to it's not a multicellular or unicellular organism. Okay. Versus the eukaryotes. Point two, the eukaryotes constitute the domain of the eukarya or karyota organisms, which cells have a membrane-bound nucleus. We know all life forms are considered living organisms. Okay, all life forms are considered living organisms. We know that the difference between the prokaryote and the eukaryote is that one has a nucleus or membrane bound and one does not. Okay, so the one that does has the ability to procreate, which has the ability to create life forms here on the planet Earth as a result of the prokaryote and the eukaryote being found on the planet Earth as a result of it being fossilized. All right, being found majority over here in what we call North America, which I'll prove in a second, which I already proved on this lecture. All animals, plants, fungi, and many unicellular organisms are eukaryotes, all right? Multicellular or unicellular organisms, okay? Versus prokaryote, which is an organism that does not have a nucleus or membrane. And you know, all those that are considered life forms on the planet originated from the eukaryotes that has a cell membrane and a nucleus, okay? And all those that were created from that membrane or nucleus from that eukaryotes were the animals, plants, fungi, and every other unicellular organism that evolved. Archaea is the domain of single cell organisms. These microorganisms lack cell nucleus and are therefore prokaryotic. So a prokaryotic cell is that which lacks the nucleus and the membrane, such as the prokaryotic organism, contrast to the eukaryotic organism that does have a membrane and a nucleus, which gave form to all other life forms on the planet because they have the ability to mitose or have the ability to what we call uh, uh, take other forms through mitosis or unicellular or multicellular organism. We know that archaea is a prokaryotic cell, all right? And with archaea and prokaryotic cell existed on Asgard, okay? Asgard or Asgardiocatia is a proposed superphilium consisting of a group of archaea that contains eukaryotic signature proteins. It appears that the eukaryotes the domain that contains the animals, plants, and fungi emerged within Asgard. But you hear that? So everything that we call living entities originated on Asgard, which contains the archaea and bacteria, which is called prokaryote, which are extraterrestrial cells. All right? And we know that the deities associated with Asgard, based off the myth, are Loki, which means shapeshifter, okay, which under in what we call study the two the main two kingdoms. You have Loki Arcadia as proposed by the Phidium of Arcadia, all right, and it says that uh Thor Arcadia from samples taken from the White Oak River in North Carolina, named in reference to Thor, another Norse god. So we got Asgard, all right, where the place where the gods come from. Then we got Loki, which was the shapeshifter. Now we got Thor, all right, which is the god of thunder. We know the only way thunder, which is energy, can travel is by way of a vacuum, okay, which is called what you call it's called a medium, all right? A medium is a way for energy to travel from one point to another, okay? So it says Doricadia formed from samples taken from White Oak River here in North Carolina, okay? Name in reference to Dor, another Norse god. Not in Africa, not in Europe, not in Asia, but here in North Carolina, okay? All right? It says here, White Oak River Estuary in the United States contains Odin Arcadia. So now we have Thor, Loki, and we also got Odin, as well as Heimdall Arcadia, following the Norse deity naming convention. These groups were named for Odin and Heimdall, respectively. Researchers therefore named the superphilium containing the mist microbes Asgard as after the home of the gods in Norse mythology. So the gods didn't live on Earth like we're living on Earth, but yet they were seen as mortal. Why? Because it was a myth to them, whereas the true origin of the story that was created, the myth that told to us was the story about us, which were not myths, because we go back to the true essence of how the space was created, which is a form of ether. And when God said, let us create, God created heaven and earth, he was in a state of ether, because ether is a state where all the planets was created from by way of what we call a gravitational collapse, which is what we call a black hole, which was created by way of what we call supernova. Okay? So we understand that prokaryotic cells created eukaryotic cells, which were created in Asgard. And we know that eukaryotic cells created in Asgard is what all life forms were composed of, which is genetic material that are stored in their biochemical or biophysical self, known as memory, okay? Known as memory. We see that the majority of Asgard consists of prokaryote and eukaryote is here in North America. All right? North America. All right? North America versus it being in Africa, where they originated from, because they said out of Africa, meaning the migration, the diaspora of all life forms supposedly came from Africa. All right? We know that when we're dealing with the TO map, we're dealing with Shem, Ham, and Japheth, which was the son of Noah, all right, after the repopulation of Earth, after the flood. We know the flood is an abstract story because we know that the flood was a story that's told to take us off the focal point in regards to the narrative of who's telling the story. And we know if the person telling the story was God, then God can possibly not be physical to be on Earth telling them what's going on. We must basically be conscious of that, all right? So we see that most of the genetic material for life to exist on the planet originated here in North America based off the genetic findings going back to what we call prokaryotic cells, which existed 4.5 billion years ago. That's proven. Eukaryo Genesis, the process which created the eukaryotic cell, in lineage is a milestone in the evolution of life. Since eukaryotes included all complex cells and almost all multicellular organisms, life arose on Earth once it had cooled enough for oceans to form. Did you hear that? Did you hear that? The last universal common ancestor was the organism which had ribosomes and the genetic code and lived 4 billion years ago. It gave rise to two main branches of the prokaryotic life, which is the extraterrestrial cell, the bacteria, and the archaea, which is from Asgard, which we know here in North America. From among these small cell rapidly dividing ancestors arose the eukaryotic cell, which is much larger cell nucleus and distinctive biochemistry, which is based upon engram, because engram is the memory that's stored in the biophysical and biochemistry, which we know that according to Eukaryo form a domain that contains all complex cells and most types of multicellular organisms, including animals, plants, and fungi, which involve evolution. So when you talk about evolution, you got to go back to the first known man. Let's go back to the Clovis culture. And close. Clovis culture. We know Clovis culture goes back to Clovis the first, because Clovis is just a name uh, of a people that associated with a culture that goes back to what we call Paleo-Indian. Paleo-Indian, which goes back to what we call Stone Age, because it deals with the creation of the artifacts that were found, okay, here in North America, okay? The Clovis culture is the archaeological culture from Paleo-Indian period in North America, spanning around 13,050 to 12,750 years before the present. Okay, so before we go to that, let's first deal with the United States of America. All right, let's deal with that, United States. To deal with the start of the United States, all right? Because it's going to go right back to the Paleo-Indian and the Clovis culture. It's going to go right back then. Done. And they know they wasn't over here because the God's children were here. They originated as a result of the migration of the Homo sapien and the Homo erectus and the Homo sapien, or the Homo sapien and Homo erectus and whatever else involved. Okay, let's prove it. The United States of America, commonly known as the United States or America, is a country primarily located in North America. Okay, we know that. Let's go to the origin. History. The first inhabitants of North America migrated from Siberia across the Bering Land Bridge at least 12,000 years ago. The Clovis culture were appeared around 11,000 BC and is believed to be the first widespread culture in America. We know Clovis never claimed to be the sons of God, so we can all associate it with those who originated from evolution versus those who were here or existed prior to evolution, because these were the sons of God that we're talking about in Genesis first. Before that, evolutionary man was created, such as the Paleo-Indian, which originated as a result of the diaspora out of the outer Africa movement. All right, so let's prove it. Clovis culture were the ones who originated out of the North Africa diaspora. Let's prove it. Let's go to Clovis culture. In closing. In closing. Clovis culture is an archaeological culture from Paleo-Indian period in North America, spanning around, as we just said, all right? And they're based upon the artifact that were found here in North America, all right? But they were Paleo-Indians, so let's go to Paleo-Indians in closing. Because we know those were the ones who migrated or colonized North America, okay? Yes, the Clovis culture. That's an English. That's an English name. Where you get the name from? Because back in the Stone Age, they wasn't conscious or not growing up to start calling themselves by name. Well said. Paleo Indians were the first people to enter and subsequently inhabited the Americas toward the end of the late Pleistocene period. Okay, let's just go down a little further. Traditional theory suggests that the big animals hunted crossing the Bering Strait from North Asia into America over the land bridge called Beringa. All right, so you're talking about the Clovis culture who do that diaspora, immigrated or migrated or colonized North America back in 12,000 BC. which were called the Clovis culture, from which the Merovingians and the Carolingians were with the Cappadine dynasty, or the Frankish Nordic kings descended down from, which were relatives of what we call the North Viking kings, from which Asgardians, so known as Thor, Loki, Heimdall, and all them descend down from. All right, that's where they descend down from. All right, and they originated as part of what they call the pale skin, like my man just said. But let's go to the migration. Let's deal with the migration to North America. All right, look at the map, y'all. Map of early human migration based on the outer Africa theory. Figures are thousands of years. So KY means 1,000 a year, 1,000 years. Okay? The outer Africa diaspora. Okay? So if you want to say that all life originated in Africa, that conflicts with the proof dealing with the fossilized uh, 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 molecular genetic material found in the fossilized evidence found in what we call North America, dealing with the first original genes found here in North America and proving life itself, going back to the eukaryotic cell and the periodic cell. All right? Those are the evidence that what they're telling you is not true. All right? All life did not originate in Africa, because the migration of those who immigrated from Africa originated by way of the immigration or migration across the Bering Strait, which they didn't say they were Africans. They said they were Paleo Indians of the Clovis culture. So the only way those Africans could have gotten here was by way of what we call slavery or discovery. And we know those who discovered North America would actually participate in slavery. Okay, so you must understand that the dynamics of what's being said to you today. All right, the outer Africa movement. Okay, the outer Africa movement deals with the migration of those Paleo Indians known as the Clovis culture to North America. Okay, as you can see it, let's pull it up. All right, this is the most concentrated area in North Africa. Okay, the most concentrated area in North Africa, dealing with the outer Africa diaspora in regards to those who immigrated here to North America, as if this was the new world and that was the old world, but which is a bunch of lies based off the proof that we got that was proven based off what the Asgardian was trying to tell us, which is confirmed by fossilized findings in regards to the proof of all life dealing with evolution originated from the Eukaryotes, which was rooted in the periodosis cell that goes back not 4 billion years ago, all right, to the creation of the planet Earth after the Earth cooled and the crust of the Earth formed, okay? In North America, not in Africa, okay? You got one dot that I showed you with our clothes on. In my book, The Children of God, you got one dot over in Africa. So how could there be an out of Africa diaspora in regard to us being called Africans or any other identity? All right. Okay. So once again, this is the evidence for all those saying that there was a African diaspora for all African people, whether you want to call them Negro, Black, Color, Ethiopia, I wouldn't give a damn what you try to call them. All right. You see one proof of the evidence of the existence of life, which includes plants, animals, beasts, foe, as well as human beings, did not originate in North Africa, because the only source they got for the existence of those molecular molecules for the existence of life was marine water. Okay, marine water. Then you got another one in uh, upper North Europe, and you got one in Asia. Okay, so as you can see here, I didn't write this information. All right, the proof is in the pudding. The proof is in the pudding. All right, so let me go to what I want to go to in closing. Here's the golden age, y'all. Return of the gold. As you can see here, your king has a lawsuit against the United States federal government, Federal Reserve System, United Department of Treasury, and the office of the agencies employed. The suit was filed July 21st, 2023. All right, 2023. Let's go to a bill passed in 2023 by United States 111th Congress first session. Okay, let's read what this entails. House Resolution 2435 is actually a TikTok page that's out circulating. But once again, who are they talking about? Because we know that Americans, all right, were not original inhabitants or not the original beneficiaries of this gold, because the Americans have to go back to how America got to start. And in order to find that, got to go back to the American people. Who are the true American people? And it ain't those people called Americans, because that name was created by colonizers who immigrated here, such as the Paleo Indians, okay? Prior to that, there was people here, and we know they were Anglo-Saxons because they were in conflict with those Frankish Nordic kings who created this falsehood by way of what we call New Spain, New France, which was under the Kingdom of Spain and Kingdom of France, and they were warring with the Plantagenet dynasty, all right? So as we see here, House Resolution 2435 to define the dollar as a fixed rate of gold for other purposes. By Mr. Mooney for himself, Mr. Biggs, and Mr. Gosar introduced the following bill, which was referred to as the Committee on the Financial Services. Check it out. A bill to define the dollar as a fixed rate of gold and for other purposes. Being acted by the state, by the Senate and the House of Representatives of the United States of America and Congress, a simple section short title. The act may be cited as the Gold Standard Restoration Act. All right. Congress finds the following: the Federal Reserve note has lost more than 40% of the purchasing power since 2000 and 97% of the purchasing power since the passage of the Federal Reserve Act in 1913. Under 2% inflation objective of the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System, and this act hereafter referred to as the Federal Reserve, a dollar loses half of its purchasing power every generation or 35 years. At the time, including 2021 and 2022, Federal Reserve actions helped create inflation rate of 8% or higher, increasing the cost of living for many Americans to untenable levels. American families need long-term price stability to meet their household spending needs, save money, and plan for retirement. The Federal Reserve policy of long-term inflation had made American manufacturing uncompetitive, raising the cost of United States manufacturing goods by more than 40% since 2000 compared to less than 2% in Germany and France. Since 2000, United States manufacturing employment has declined by at least 25% after having remained steady at nearly 18 million jobs for more than 30 years. The American economy needs a stable dollar, fixed exchange rate, and money supply controlled by the market and not the government, right? The gold standard puts control of the money supply with the market instead of the Federal Reserve, discourages excessive deficient spending, and encourages the balancing of federal budget. The gold standard means legal tender defined by and convertible into a certain quantity of gold. Under the gold standard through 1913, the United States economy grew at an annual average of 4%, one-third larger than the growth rate than twice the level since 2000. The Federal Reserve trickle-down policy of expanding the money supply has primarily enriched the owners of financial assets, while it has endangered the jobs, wages, and the savings of blue-collar workers, i.e. the middle class. Restoring American middle class prosperity requires change in monetary policy authorized by Congress in Article 168, Clause 5 of the Constitution. Section 3 defines the Federal Reserve note dollar in terms of gold. No later than the date that is 24 months after the date of the enactment of this act, The Secretary of Treasury and the act hereafter referred to as the Secretary should define the Federal Reserve note dollar in terms of the fixed rate of gold based on the day's enclosed market price gold. Federal Reserve banks should make Federal Reserve notes redeemable for and exchangeable with gold at a fixed price determined under paragraph 1 and create processes that facilitate such redemption and exchange between member banks and the public. And if the Federal Reserve Bank does not fulfill its duties under paragraph 2, the secretary shall make the redemption or exchange as guarantor and place a corresponding first and paramount lien on the assets of such banks. Did y'all hear that? Did y'all hear that? Why did they do that? Let's go ahead. Species Assumption Act. In closing. The Specie Payment Resumption Act of January 14, 1875 was a law of the United States that restored the nation to the gold standard through the redemption of previously unbacked United States notes and reversed inflationary government policy promoted directly after the American Civil War. The decision further contracted the nation's money supply and was seen by critics as exacerbating factors of the so-called loan depression, which struck in 1873. In closing, the Resumption Act was hotly debated during the 1880 presidential election, with most Western political opposed to it. Specie payments finally resumed during the presidency of Rutherford B. Hayes, aided by the return of prosperity in 1877. Secretary of Treasury John Sherman accumulated a gold reserve to be redeemed for existing greenbacks, mostly from transactions with Europe. Sherman's earmarked a redemption fund by January 1st, 1879, that amounted to $133 million acquired from the sales of bonds of Europe and Treasury surplus. However, when the people found greenbacks to be on par with gold, they lost their desire for redemption. So why all of a sudden now is the Federal Reserve commanding the Department of Treasury to now back those greenbacks in regards to the amount of an exchange as required by law, okay? And who does the gold go to in regards to the public? It goes to those who are descendants of the crown, because the money that belonged to the crown was the authority that governed the crown, under the British monarch, when United, or what we call the colonies, came into their existence. All right. So we see reservation or remandering of the estate going back to how the estate existed when our ancestors had it prior to the colonization or diaspora of those who now stole it by way of the usurpation of our history. All right. So with that, I'm gonna greet you in the name of our ancestors, who are the Ethereans, and hope that in light of this lesson, that you will return back to your true state in your purest form. So with that, I'm gonna close out, share my screen, and answer any questions that are out there prior to me closing out. All right, so any questions, please bring them out. Please bring them out. Let me know. Well, I assume everyone is on the same par. All right. So once again, this is the Eukaryo Genesis versus the one created by King James in regards to your birthright that God promised you through the message that he sent you by way of what we call transduction. When a transduction is the translation of the energy or message to the converting of that energy or message to a stimuli, and then creating what we call electrical signal that we interpret based off our neural receptors or sensory neurons or reflector cell, okay, which is based upon your somatic nervous system, which the brain internalizes based off the mental uploading contrast to the digital uploading, as they want us to think is the reason for the call of our sanity, okay, of our sanity, all right? So let me just pull that up real quick. All those who want uh, the pamphlet, The Children of God, all right, is available for $15. Okay, it's available for $15 as a donation. Okay, as a donation, and like I said, it's one of a kind. One of a kind. Yes, sir. Eukaryo Genesis, the book of Genesis. Right, right there. And I didn't need all. I didn't even need all those pages. This is only how many pages? 13 pages. 13. They don't like that number 13. Okay, they do not like that number. All right. So once again, I suggest each and every one of you who are viewing this lesson, please, please, please go over it, understand it, review it, dissect it, because your birthright depends upon that. Right? Your birthright depends upon that. I can see the screen behind us. Dark matter, ether. Okay? All right? A dark facades. That's you. Okay? But you must know you're a God by comprehending what it takes to be a God. Okay? What it takes to be a God. So with all things, I greeted you as our ancestors would greet you once you make your return home back to that illustrious straight estate. But until then, I'm gonna greet you as I meet you, and that's always in what we call peace.